Committee Room 29. Sound. Committee Room 29. Committee Room 29. Sound. 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 Committee Room 29. Sound.
Okay, good afternoon members, and welcome to this afternoon's sitting of the Education Committee. We have a number of items on the agenda today, but we are down a few members. Most members are joining us remotely today, so we have Cara, John, Michelle, Kathy all joining remotely. But before we kick off the meeting, I'm going to go through the housekeeping. So I'd advise members that the committee meeting will be recorded and broadcast throughout Parliament buildings and online. And I would advise anyone in the public gallery that they're welcome to use mobile devices as long as they're in airplane mode and that all devices are muted, and it is not permitted to take photographs or record any part of the meeting. So, item 1 on the agenda then is apologies. We have an apology from Julie, and then we've mentioned the members who are joining remotely. If any members who are joining the meeting remotely, if they could, through the clerk, advise if they're having any issues with their audio or their connection to the meeting. But hopefully all will go smoothly. Item 2 on the agenda is chairperson's business. I have nothing to raise at this stage this week, so we'll move on to item 3 on the agenda, which is declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest that they need to register in relation to any item on today's agenda? No, nothing at this stage. If anything should arise, as usual, please indicate so that can be noted for the record. Item 4 on the agenda is matters arising. I don't have anything at this stage, other than possibly just to note, and we'll deal with it at correspondence, but just so members are aware, there's been a document circulated in relation to an SL1 that the Justice Committee is seeking the committee's response to, but I'm going to propose at the start of the correspondence section of the agenda, just give members a few minutes reading time, because the Justice Committee are keen to dispose of that item at their meeting tomorrow. So we'll address that at correspondence, as it's only just arrived in members' inboxes. So unless there's anything else at item 4, we will move on to item 5 on the agenda, and that's draft minutes. So I'd refer members to the draft minutes of the Education Committee meeting of the 20th of May, which is at page 7 of your packs. Can I get members' agreement that those are a complete and accurate record of proceedings? Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Okay. Item 6 on the agenda then is an oral briefing from a group of school principals teaching in the Irish medium section, and it is in relation to the Irish Medium Education Workforce Plan Bill. So there's a briefing note from the committee clerk at page 22 of your packs, and there is there are workforce planning bill papers at pages 23 and 33 of your packs. So just to begin by welcoming our two witnesses, we have Michal McGilla-Huna, Principal of College de Fursta, forgive me if I've pronounced anything incorrectly there, and Diarmid Abruder, Principal of Gael College de Dira. Again, hope I've pronounced all of that correctly. You're very welcome today to the committee, and we'll usually begin our evidence session with an opening presentation, and I think you've indicated that you will be delivering that in Irish, so we've got the live translation services for members available if that's required. So if I could ask for initial presentation to be up to 10 minutes in length, and then we'll move into question and answer after that. So it's over to yourselves. Thank you.
Okay, well.
Thank you for the invitation. I am Michal McGilla-Huna from College de Fursta. As a post-primary school, Irish language medium school situated in West Belfast, we have 1,000 pupils, about 62 teachers, and we will be 50 classroom assistants. And I will provide education in Ireland from the ages of 8 to 15. From the start of their educational journey to A level. We also do apprenticeships. The school is succeeding, and that's why we are going to it. We want to create an Irish language community, and which is qualified and which has knowledge, create positive outlooks towards the Irish language, and to support the development of the Irish language in the community. My colleague here, Diarmid, would like to say a few words as well about College de Dira. Thank you. I'm Diarmid Abruder, the principal of College de Dira. And you saw the lovely situation where we are. It is in Dungannon Castle. The second full Irish language secondary school in the north. We have existed now for 10 years, and we provide Irish language education from year 8 to year 14. We are an all-ability school. We are an effective school, and we are a school that stresses academic achievement and Irish language, Irish games, and drama as well. So thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to speak to you today. We are very happy to discuss the workforce question. It is extremely important. There are plenty of challenges before us and the lack of workforce. And we'd like to say a couple of words about how important it is to us and about the challenges that face us in the sector. First, we think that is a question of equality. Students in Killeagh should have the same access to subject-specific teachers and specialists as students in English medium schools. They should have the same access to curriculum and to qualifications. They should have the same support from classroom assistants, the Education Authority. There's a principle in the education system that support is provided according to needs. It is clear that different sectors need different support to achieve equality. And that is the same with the Irish medium sector. If special or need or planning is required for one sector, that should be available for any other sector so that we can plan properly throughout this education system. We've had plenty of meetings with officials from the department for many years now, and we've always got a good hearing, but nothing has happened. No difference was made in the schools and to our young people because there's no clear plan to take action to the proposals that we made to the department. Therefore, what is the current situation? Well, much work has been done to analyse the numbers and in particular the subject areas needed to meet a demand, and that demand is increasing. Little planning has been done with the initial teacher training with Mary's College and Stranmillis. There's only an enhanced Irish course, which is a small part of the PCGE delivered through English, in which there are only 8 places. And there's no planning to link these places with projected school vacancies or with curriculum development. There's no plan with those colleges for continuous professional development for non-specialist teachers and to develop their understanding of the subject or of the teaching of the subject in the classroom. And there's no planning for conversion courses to meet the demand in a flexible way. For example, high ability teachers with general subjects converting to subject specialists. There's no planning by higher education institutions regarding degrees in Irish with other subjects, such as joint honours or subsidiary subjects, especially in relation to STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering and maths. Due to that lack of planning, challenges already been added to Gael Scalana in the post-primary level. I would like to explain to you some of the challenges that we face and give you some more detail in the report that I gave you before. As for recruitment and retention, our numbers have risen to 1,000 pupils since 2021, and that's 1,000 today. There has been a remarkable growth in Irish language sector. Gael College Gera was formed in 15 with 13 pupils, and we now, 11 years later, we have 400 pupils. As for the turnover and the number of pupils, in Costa Farcia last year, we had 14 vacancies, and that's before we start to fill the gaps in provision. And as I say, we have details in our paper. As for our curriculum offer, Costa Farsta is non-selective, as Costa is. Therefore, we welcome all pupils to return after the age of 16, and we provide a full Irish language education for them. But that is a challenge for our curriculum offer, as we limited the number of subjects that we can provide. We are developing apprenticeships through the Irish language, but the biggest challenge is finding specialists who can teach those qualifications at a high level. At present, Costa Farsta can offer between 25 and 27 qualifications at GTCNI, SE, with many non-specialists, but the A-level curriculum has been limited to 15 subjects for some years now, because the lack of teachers and the lack of workforce specialist teachers. Every young person is entitled to have a wide choice of qualifications, both general and vocational. A plan is needed to develop these specialists. As for teaching, even when we have the teachers, they're often non-specialists, and we have given extra detail in Appendix 3. But every student has the right to access expertise from subject specialist teachers, especially at GCSE level. However, there's no plan to support those general teachers, and we have had to develop our own ad hoc scheme with St Mary's College and with Stranillis. The student-teacher ratio has implications for recruiting and for retainment, because we can't keep pace with the numbers increasing in the school. It is accepted that different ratios are needed depending on the learning context. Queen's University is conducting research on the ratio in the Gaels sector, and a report will be published in the autumn for its findings, and that will have implications for workforce planning. As for special educational needs, we have 109 students with SEN statement, and they are entitled to receive appropriate support from classroom assistants. But at present, there are 466 hours of support are left unfilled. We would need 19 full-time assistants to cover those hours. And moreover, 17 more students who have statements will be starting with us in the autumn. Therefore, there's an urgency in planning this aspect of the workforce. Teachers outside the area of expertise are learning subjects for the first time and preparing learning resources, and that creates additional workload and puts extra pressure on those teachers. And that's a question that has been widely discussed in the sector and with the union. The problem is much worse in the Irish language sector. Department heads and school leaders are providing support, and that is another added workload, because there's a lack of workforce, and that drives into our time of teachers to prepare for other subjects. Usually, Education Authority helps with these issues, career developments and practice, and helps us out with student support and student improvement issues. But the Education Authority does not have a dedicated team, nor does it have an experience or expertise to support Irish medium schools. They don't even have a single practitioner from the sector working on SEN issues. And there's no plan to address that challenge. Therefore, we have to work on that on our own, which adds extra pressures and challenges. As for SIA, we agreed a plan based on priorities with SIA a few years ago to provide learning resources to our students, the resources that students have in English language skills. However, we have received few resources due to a lack of staff at CCA. That has a significant impact on students' learning experience and on the workload of teachers. Therefore, Gaeilge students have the same right to a high standard of education as their peers in English medium schools, including access to a specialised workforce to meet their needs. These students still face particular challenges, however, even though Gaelic teachers have been discussing with the department for years to implement practical measures to mitigate the challenges. The experience of school leaders, its staff and students is that the department's duty to encourage and facilitate sectoral development has little, if any, practical effect. Workforce planning will not address all the issues facing the growth and development of Irish medium education. None of the measures commended by this sector in the 2019 paper to the department, nor in the updated 2023 Coilín Gaels Gaeliachta paper to the department, has been implemented. And they will not be implemented unless there is a workforce plan. The challenges resulting from this from Irish medium schools and the impact on students' learning are constantly increasing. And that's the reason we think there is a necessity for workforce planning. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And if any member wishes to ask any of their questions in Irish, the live translation service will be available for that. And yes, I just want to say from my visit up to Gael College to Deir, it is one of the most beautiful school sites you could probably wish to visit. And if anyone wants to take a trip and maybe add that to your sort of top 5 most beautiful school sites, it's definitely up there. It really is. It's a very special location. Look, I spoke to this private members bill at second stage and was very clear, no issues from me in terms of the principles of the bill, so I want to just get down to sort of the detail in terms of the practical effect it might have. I wanted to pick up on the SEN pressures around workforce in particular, and you'd highlighted that really severe shortage of classroom assistants and the lack of representation in terms of EA support services in the local impact teams. Can you set out what the impact on both pupils and staff in the school is based on that shortage of those specialist SEN inputs going into your settings?
You can imagine, for example, first of all, we're taking in anyone we can get. So in terms of qualifications, we have to take new classroom assistants through various courses and through professional learning and career development or professional development. They leave very quickly because really these are young people who are very committed and very, very good with our young people, but nevertheless they're passing through really. You know, there are people who have finished at university and maybe are waiting to go on to another career, or they're taking time out of school. There are a number who maybe have been with us a little bit longer, and they're absolutely brilliant. So in terms of the professional development of classroom assistants within an Irish medium context, no one's touching that except for ourselves. In terms of the practical effects on children on a day-to-day basis, if we have 466 hours that we can't meet already, we are putting children together with one classroom assistant where they should have 1-to-1. So we're putting 3 to 4 together at times. Then if that classroom assistant doesn't come in, there's no support at all. Their parents can be very distressed at times also because they know what support their children need and they're not getting it. They're not getting what they should be getting. In terms of the stresses on school leadership, particularly at Senko, and I feel very sorry, people wonder if it's difficult being a school principal. It's much more difficult being a Senko. And our Senko and the team around her have to plug gaps constantly. They can start off in the morning with a plan of support and they have to change it, and then pupils, natural enough, at times will have meltdowns and so on. parents be worried, and there's an awful lot of stress and energy wasted with that. Don't know, Diarmuid, if you want to say about Gael Scholars Together.
Yeah, I think, the way that the issue is exacerbated is when there's not enough support in the education authority or outside of the school to support the work of special educational need inside the schools. But, we've learned Irish medium schools are very innovative. We have to learn to twist and turn and make sure that the resource that we do have is used well. And we have found, and I'm involved with the Roe Valley Learning Community, and we have 7 schools in that learning community where our SENCOs get together and share the best practice. And we find that we have a lot to offer because, in some ways, Irish medium schools are a bit like the canary in the coal mine. The issues that we experience very, very strongly are soon going to be experienced by the wider educational sector. So I'm sure that some of the issues that we're talking about today resonate with maybe some principals in English medium schools. But, obviously we've been, feeling that pinch for much longer. And I think that there's an opportunity there as well to look at the way that we have dealt with these issues, whether it's through secondment opportunities, whether it's through working maybe smarter, not harder, with the resource that we have, innovative use of the SPIMS settings to ensure that the maximum amount of pupils are getting the advantage of that. I think that there's lessons to be learned there for the wider educational educational sector. And so we do have less resource to work with, but we do make it work in our own particular way.
Could I ask on that? I mean, obviously, I don't think anybody would think it would be acceptable of sort of having to make do and find workarounds. You want the service to be fit for purpose. Would it be a challenge when support services come in from the EA, be it whatever, behavioural support or literacy support or, your educational psychologist, that they're coming into an Irish medium setting and delivering that support in a different language? Does that create challenges in terms of the education provision for that child?
It creates challenges from whether you're talking about special educational need to just, TPL, teacher development and, and support, sometimes we're very lucky in the sense that we have one Irish medium practitioner who was maybe appointed a year and a half ago maybe, and that we're able to use. And there was a discussion. I had a discussion with the TPL lead in our area learning community regarding a middle leadership programme to support and to develop the skills of middle leaders. And I was trying to get across that I would prefer that it was the Irish medium specialist who delivered that in school. And the answer was, well, I suppose, in a middle leadership programme, we deliver it in the Catholic schools, we deliver it in controlled schools, we deliver it in integrated schools. Middle leadership programme is the same anywhere. And I said, well, it's not exactly, trying to get across the idea to someone who doesn't speak Irish or who doesn't have an understanding of Irish medium education is difficult. But it's sort of saying, well, if you have a GCSE maths book, you can use it in any of those settings if it's in English. But it's not of any use to me. I need the Irish version of that. So maybe I'm a little bit radical here in saying that for me there's 2 sectors. There's the English medium sector and there's the Irish medium sector. In the English medium sector you have a variety of schools. In the Irish medium sector we have controlled, Catholic maintained, other maintained, and now we have integrated as well. And so the teacher professional development, all of that requires to be provided in Irish. And that has happened in our school, and we've found the benefits of it. But it was difficult to sort of maybe get that message across. And I do think that message is now being taken on board. And
I think it's not always appreciated that Irish medium education is not a translation of English medium education. It's a different way of approaching the development of skills, understanding, and knowledge within the classroom. So it's about a different pedagogy. It's about there's something different happening even within the brains of the children. And that's what research would say, and that's why it adds value to a child's education apart from anything else. But that means it requires not only a different textbook in Irish, but a bespoke textbook that plans for the development of a child's learning in a particular way, and then that requires practitioners who understand that, and that requires practitioners going out and working with the education authority in order to support schools. If I would say, just in terms of the 15, 20 years ago, they had 3 people working on Irish medium. Now, basically, they have 1. We might have another one somewhere, but basically, they have 1 that's determined. So, while the Irish medium education increases, the actual number of practitioners within the education authority decreases, and they've no plans to address that.
I'll just ask one really brief question, and then I'll move on to other members. In terms of what any workforce plan would include on the other side of this bill, if it passes, would you be saying it needs to then, from what I'm hearing from your evidence, that you're saying it needs to be more than just teachers? It is also classroom assistants, it's EA support services that go in. It needs to account for that whole ecosystem. Is that
absolutely?
Is that
and I mean, even allied health services.
Yeah, the health angle as well. Yeah. No, that's really helpful. Deputy Chair, I'll bring you in if you want.
Thank you, and thank you for coming here today. Those who oppose this bill say that it gives an advantage to your sector above any other sector. What would you say about that view? Well, as I said in my presentation, there is a principle in education that you support with regard to need, and so if pupils need more support than others, they should get that support in our school, and that is how it should be with classroom assistants, pupils who need classroom assistance. We have to look at what we want to achieve. Do we want our pupils to have the same access to the same types of education? If certain sectors have faced certain challenges, we have to tackle those challenges. And that is a principle with regard to special educational needs. There is a different approach needed, and sometimes that extra support doesn't exist in the IAM sector. Maybe we don't have the resources, maybe we need extra support, but we have to get that extra support to bring about equity and equality. At present, IM pupils are at a disadvantage, and we have to address that issue. Jeremy comes in. I agree with what Michal says. If you have a specific strategy for IM, we have to look at this as an advantage for the whole education system. If something works for teachers in such a small sector, who have so little resources, why not look at spreading out that approach in different sectors, and maybe bring everybody up in the education system? As Michal said, it is up to other people to make the call whether this is giving one sector an advantage. But I think this is a very sensible educational approach. And in the case of IM, we don't have enough staff, basically. Pat says, so really you're trying to bring about equity. Michal, every pupil should have the same access to subject-specific teachers as they do have in EM schools. Pat comes in again. The Education Minister has said is not needed because he is going to take forward a strategy that will be ready next year, I think. He says that there's no need for this bill. Would you agree with the Minister, Michal? Well, a strategy means what we should do. A plan means what we are going to do. we have discussed strategies with the DE, and we agree on most points. We've had meetings with the DE in 2019. We agreed many actions that would be sensible in 2020. We agreed a paper with DE and EA with what would be needed to achieve those aims. 2023 CNI brought together all the recommendations in a paper ensuring effective teacher supply in IME. In 2024, I attended a meeting with regard to workforce planning in the DE, and IME was supposed to be part of those overall strategies. So we're still waiting, though. Nothing has ever happened. We don't see any practical change in our schools. In fact, things are getting worse. Why? Because it doesn't matter about all the good ideas, about the strategies. If you don't have a plan to implement those strategies to make a difference on the ground in schools, nothing happens. So that is why a plan now is important without waiting for a strategy. A strategy can put a plan in context and link it up with other plans, but a plan is really what we need now. September is coming, and I don't think this plan will be in place for September, but basically that is the deadline that we are looking into. Pat comes in, so you have experience of strategies coming from the department. I was speaking to someone who was at the Transform Ed conference, and they were said that the education minister said at that conference the department is full of strategies that are gathering dust on the shelves. What do you think about that, Michal? I do remember this strategy in 2015, and I thought it was very interesting. 10 years on, we didn't see anything coming out of that. So it looked into the modern languages and developing these, but nothing happened because they weren't developed in the universities and then feeding on into the schools. There may have been a strategy, but again, there was no plan to actually implement it on the ground. So we love talking about strategies, but what happens, what comes out of them? In our experience, very little. So Jeremy comes in. I don't think there's any disagreement here between Corley and the Gael Scully Act and what we are saying with regard to the challenges and the solutions that that can overcome those difficulties. There's even the DE is of the same opinion with regard to taking in legislation to helping the situation. But I think it would be good if we were reading of the same hymn sheet with regard to what exactly has to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. John, you had indicated, but I see your hands down. Are you still looking to come in?
Yes, it's just I can't see the translation, and my Irish isn't up to scratch. But I will ask the question, and then at least it can be on the record. If I can't understand it, I can look it up. Thanks so far for your evidence, which I'll have a look at the translation later. Ballycastle Shared Education Campus is opening in my constituency, and it's going to represent really world-class, mutually beneficial engagement arrangement for both communities. Is working in collaboration with other schools in a similar format something you'd be willing to consider, entertain, particularly if they had Irish-speaking staff?
Certainly, we're involved in shared education.
Thank you.
We're involved in shared education at the minute with 3 other schools in Belfast, and then another project cross border with a couple of schools, I think, in County Down, and then in the south. So there is always room for collaboration, But in terms of what I explained about the Irish medium pedagogy, teachers who work in Irish medium aren't Irish speakers. They're people trained to teach through the medium of Irish specialist subjects. So if you took maths, for example, and you're teaching maths through the medium of Irish, it takes more than a maths teacher who has learned some Irish. It takes someone who is trained to understand how to develop those mathematical concepts and the activities around them to support the learning through the medium of Irish. So yes, there may be some benefits to that, and that's one of the ideas. But the problem is that we have lots of little ideas floating about, and everyone thinks they're interesting or good ideas. But without a plan, it's never going to happen. It's just another idea.
Okay, fair enough. Give you one other question. And look, a lot of people come into the committee and they need more money. I mean, we hear this right across the piece in public services in Northern Ireland. But if there were one or two workforce interventions, and you talk about some stuff in your evidence, I mean, what one workforce intervention would deliver the greatest impact for the lowest cost?
That's been debated, I suppose, over the years, the cost versus benefit analysis. We've tried them all on a school level. We'd be willing to share our experience with the department and we have shared our experience with the department. We've tried secondments where teachers, as you mentioned, there may be teachers who speak Irish who could possibly be trained and work in our own school, but who maybe have a bit of an apprehension about making the leap immediately into Irish medium education on a permanent basis, but may be facilitated to come and work on a secondment for a year or 2 years and then gain experience, gain confidence and decide to stay. That's one, I would say, cost neutral nearly way of working it. But there is going to be an investment needed in initial teacher training. We need, I suppose, more. We do need the PGCE for post-primary. We're both post-primary teachers, principals, and we do need a bespoke post-primary qualification for Irish medium post-primary education, which we don't have at the moment. So there is going to be some costs required, but I think it would be really important, as you said, in a climate where resources is scant, that we get the best deal for whatever resource that there is available, and that comes through engagement with the sector and looking at the experience both of College First and ourselves, which has been slightly different, but we've worked all of those proposals that we have made in the paper that we submitted. We've tried out on a school level, and those could be, suppose, scaled up to a system-wide level, I'd say, with a small amount of resource.
I think the paper that Corley Sculliac submitted in 2023, ensuring effective teacher supply, and we had an input into all of that, and it was a sort of collation of all the ideas that had been knocked about with the department over a number of years and agreed more or less with them. And there were a couple of things which wouldn't cost very much. So, for example, a repurposing of the PGC places into a proper Irish medium PGC. So at present there's eight places. Most of them are taken up by non-specialists really, or people with degrees in Irish. And that would require a little bit of marketing and recruitment and a little bit of drive around that to repurpose those 8 places initially. Secondly, we're losing quite a lot of young teachers right across the board, not just Irish medium, to travel. They used to be going to Qatar and places, now it seems to be Australia. Eventually, a lot of those people come back, but when they come back, what they've been trained to do, to teach an Irish medium education, they've missed several years of that. They have a little bit of anxiety around going back into the sector, and they take the first job that comes along, which might be an English medium, which is a waste of that resource. So for a very limited amount of money, there could be a programme around keeping record of where those young teachers go, and when they come back, making contact and offering them a short course to upskill them again, and just to get their confidence back and tie them back into the sector, because there's a little bit of wastage there when we're training people in Irish medium, and then some of them are going off, and when they come back, they're not returning to Irish medium.
We'll just have to come in to bring that inquiry to a close, just in relation to time constraints. Thank you for that, John. Cara, I'll bring you in next.
Thank you, Chair. Gura Maigat to the panel, August Moyhu. That was a very substantial briefing, and my very limited knowledge of the Irish language, although I am trying. Thank you so much for being here. I've had the privilege of visiting Gael College Tudura a number of times over the years, and your briefing today has been extremely helpful and sadly very eye-opening. It's actually even worse than I had initially thought. I think with Pat's bill, what we're seeing is the importance of equity, and we've seen decades of underinvestment in Irish medium schools, and it is so important that our staff get the career development and the support that they need to ensure the sector is protected. One of you had said there, we work smarter and harder with the resources that we have. I think that's a devastating way of, it's very revealing about how much pressure your staff are under and how much they're stretched to serve children. I have two quick questions, particularly around developmental language disorder and the specialists that provide support for children in Irish medium settings. Are you aware of struggles around that? And then lastly, Diarmuid, years ago, what really struck me was you had talked about how English-speaking markers are marking the papers of Irish-speaking students. Can you share a bit about that with committee? And since we spoke all those years ago, if anything at all has changed? Thank you.
Maybe address that first then. So you're referring there, Cara, to the SIA exams where A-levels and GCSEs are, in some instances, in a number of subjects, there aren't Irish medium markers available or examiners available to mark those, where pupils' papers are translated into English and then marked by an English medium examiner. So that's fraught with difficulties and issues, and it can be, it requires, I would say, an additional resource to be applied, usually by ourselves in the school, to quality assure that process and make sure that there are no anomalies, no errors, and that the children get the grade that they are entitled to and that they deserve. So that kind of that's an example of where for Irish medium that we could work more intelligently with the resource that we have. The use of a translator in SIA to translate a paper is a one-off translation sort of job that's gone and thrown in the bin afterwards, after the paper has been marked. Whereas if that translator could be working on a resource that is used for teaching, that resource will be available for years to come. So it's a way, in my view, that money, through I suppose maybe markers, criteria, examiners system, in some ways that we're spending too much money unwisely in that instance, and with a poor return for our investment. And whereas if it could be done in a better way, it would be fairer for the children, and it would also make more sense from a financial point of view for the system.
And I'd imagine that would have a knock-on impact on grades, of course, because the knowledge and the insight that the student has put into the document is being lost through translation. Yeah,
no, it wouldn't have a knock-on grades because of the systems that are put in place to ensure that errors are picked up on. So children get the grade that they are entitled to. They don't get any more or any less. But the problem is the amount of resource that is spent and wasted on that particular system, whereas a more efficient system would save money and be more streamlined.
And then there's the question on developmental language delay, just as we're
that was the hard one. I think I'll give that one to Michal.
It's okay if you don't have knowledge to hand today. That's okay. I can follow up personally.
Not very specific knowledge. Like there's a big problem with or a big issue with the speech and language at primary school and early years in particular, and people aren't picking up early enough on those issues, and obviously early intervention is vital to ensure that a child isn't put off education. So that's a much bigger issue than simply workforce, and maybe would require a more detailed discussion at a later time.
Good. Gura Maggett, thank you so much. And I've really picked up some strong points today about the strategic aspects of funding and the early intervention aspects. So thank you so much for being here. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Cara, David, you'd indicated next.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks for the presentation so far. The challenges that you speak of today, and Pat acknowledges in terms of what our view on this is, but the challenges that you spoke of today are things that I do see reflected, and we can discuss whether that's a greater need in your sector than others, but there are things that I think, as you've said, they're seen across the education system. Some of the things you've just spoken about, actually, in terms of the health elements, the speech and language therapy, these are things that we discuss at length across in terms of the whole sector, and access to that and how it prevents children reaching their full potential in that. So I guess in a system where finance is in the circumstances that it is, where it is restricted, my fear is that in raising one sector above another, you're taking from sectors that are already struggling in that sense, and where does that leave them? You're welcome to speak to that, but I don't think I'm going to focus on that because we know where we are. Happy for you to comment on it if you wish. I guess one of the comments you made at the start, which I was interested in, was around the pedagogy in our schools being different, and it actually not just being a difference of language, but a difference in focus and how you do that. Someone hasn't been through that. Could you explain that further for me?
Okay, so a child in an Irish medium classroom is doing two things at once. They're developing language, and really the experts would say you're using different parts of your brain, and actually there's a different cognitive developmental curve if you're learning through two languages. By the way, immersion education isn't particular to here, and it's not particular to the Irish language. It's right across the world, and it's seen as a very good model of education, and we believe it creates a very powerful learning environment for young people.
So it's something you're saying that's about actually learning through a different language, whatever that language is, rather than a specific focus or culture within the
Yep. I mean, there's immersion education right across the world. So Hawaii, for example, do it, and Minnesota do it with Native Americans. In Finland, they do it. Right across the world, this is recognised. In fact, I think our experience here is of international interest, and the Department of Education should be celebrating that we've got something here that is of interest educationally right across the world. Something really interesting is happening here. I know a lot of focus has been on Canada because they have the wealth to do more research and to celebrate what they're doing and explain what they're doing. So that's something that's something the department's missing, to celebrate Irish medium education here and what we're doing. In terms of, we've talked a lot about the problems here, but we need to look at the positives as well. We're not doing this just because we have an interest in the Irish language. We're doing it because we believe that this is a very successful model of education. So in College to Forster, for example, we have 50% free school meals, with a lot of social deprivation, a lot of other issues that go along with that. And we have also pupils from a more affluent background as well. But none of our pupils end up as NEETs, not in employment, education or training. And that's been the case for many years. And that's because, first of all, in terms of education, they're engaged in education through the Irish language in a way maybe that their parents or their peers in other schools aren't. It means that there's something different happening within that classroom, cognitively, within their brains. And it means we also, because we're a very strong school community, we can make sure that they go to where they want to go to. So we're being very successful on that, but we're doing it in a very difficult way because we have to do it by and large on our own. We have to come up with our own solutions and our own innovations. We have to go along to St Mary's or Stranmillis and say, listen, we have teachers here teaching maths or teaching science and they don't actually have a degree. Could you come in and help them, talk them through how you'd address some of those concepts and so on. So we're doing all that on our own, and what we are saying is if there was a plan for workforce, that would make things a lot easier for ourselves, and it would make things even better for the pupils. So we have a real opportunity here rather than seeing this as a negative.
Yeah. No, I don't doubt the good educational work that you do, just as our other schools do as well. I thought you're while what's the first heard the sort of idea of a short course for returning teachers is an interesting one as well. Be specific to you as well, but I can imagine that's true. You hear teachers come back from England even, and they've been teaching a different system and they need almost a refresher and what they need to know here. So I think that's an interesting idea. It probably touches on, is there a need, and you talked on the health stuff.
Need to be able
yes,
to
but also you talked about some of the health stuff, the economy stuff. Is there some of that is about training? Some of that will come through education, but in terms of PGCE and trying to get specialists in, obviously that's a STEM issue. STEM subjects are a difficulty for many schools. But do you think, is there anything being done from the economy department, or things that you would like to be seen done from the economy department in that regard?
And that's a very good question, because at times the Department of the Economy aren't in the room with the Department of Education, and they need to be in the room. I did a very good meeting, it might have been about 2 years ago, and they were looking at the 14 to 19 strategy, and we have a big issue with the 14 to 19 strategy and the curriculum for Irish medium pupils, and particularly vocational. And we're, as I said, developing our own through apprenticeships and so on, and trying so that schools and apprenticeships and trying to develop that whole relationship there through another training organisation called Gael Kersey. It was a very good meeting with the Department for the Economy, a lot of very good ideas, a lot of agreement, but again, where's the plan? Nothing has happened since then. So absolutely, I think the Department for Education and the Department for Economy need to be jointly planning a lot of this, and there would be an input from
There's three, sorry Michael,
just be to close there.
Just a final comment on that. There's three areas where the Department of Economy could assist. One is in careers advice and guidance, where there's not a lot of information out there about careers in Irish medium, both through Irish and in Irish medium education. The second, as Michael said, is the sort of joined up thinking between the Department of Education around the area of qualifications, and especially vocational qualifications, and providing the places and the focus of the university places that are available, and making them work for the sector in terms of the PGCE or initial teacher training.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, and I think that may be an aspect we pick up even separately to this bill. I don't think we've had that in connection with the economy department raised in relation to Irish medium before, so that's very helpful. Danny, you'd indicated next.
Gormar Chair, and Gormar folks, thanks very much. I suppose I just want to focus on one area, because I understand this as a parent of children who go through Irish medium education, and someone who isn't fluent themselves, and the importance of that translation and the workload that is faced for our teachers that have to then stand the work back to us so we understand what's going on, a constant translation side of it. And a wee bit of a fear that I have, just during it came up in a debate at the second stage of this bill, and it's come up a couple of different times, and it was the minister was highlighting the use of artificial intelligence for translation and for workload, the help with the workload. What concerns would you have regarding that?
Look, people, and we saw this conversation, I suppose, happened during COVID and lockdown, and the remote learning and the role of technology within learning. Maybe I'm a little bit traditional, but I believe that learning happens between people, and that the relationships between the teacher and the young people is vital within that. We can present young people with knowledge and tell them to go off and learn it, but it's about engaging young people in learning, and those are the activities that a teacher will organise in order to make the learning accessible to the young person. So that would be my maybe traditional view of it. Having said that, we all have to move with the times, and obviously there is a role for technology, there is a role for AI. We had Classroom 2000, C2K, back in 2000, that's 25 years ago. So obviously we do need to look at educational technology, and there will be benefits for Irish medium within that also. But I don't think it's a silver bullet. I don't think it's going to change the need for teachers and classroom assistants, people supporting people, in order to get them through the most vital years of their lives, in particular from post-primary, those teenage years. That's the real work we do. It's not about delivering a curriculum to them. It's about motivating them, engaging them in learning, building up their confidence, dealing with whatever issues they have. And it might be a learning difficulty, it might be an emotional difficulty, and taking them through all of that to ensure that they end up where they should end up at the end of it, which is in education, employment or training.
100%. I share that 100% what you've just said there. I think there is a space for technology. My fear is that it's almost going to be like, there you go, there's artificial intelligence that will solve some of the problems that are being raised here, particularly within this bill, because look, it has to be said again, there's members in the chamber, the principle of the bill, voted against it and probably didn't even read a single line of it. And that's a real worrying factor. I don't think there's a real understanding of the different challenges that are facing Irish medium education. So thanks very much. That was only my point I wanted to make on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Michelle, you'd indicated next.
Thank you, and thanks, folks, for the evidence. You've outlined really well in your briefing, and I think the session today as well, so the challenges facing the Irish medium sector. The department has suggested that if this bill goes forward, that will impact on some of the other work that they're doing. With regards to the Irish medium sector, what's your reaction to that?
How would it affect it? How would this bill affect other issues?
And not for me, that's for the department, but
because I can't see how a workforce planning bill and having a plan to address workload issues or workforce issues would affect any other issues that could be moved forward regarding Irish medium education.
I go back to what I said earlier in answer to I think Pat Sheehan's question, and that it is a rare occurrence that everybody around the table is agreed on the problem and agreed on the solutions and the things that can be maybe mitigated to deal with that, whether it's the sector, whether it's Corlin the Gaelscoileachta, the department itself working on the strategy. Or the proposer of this bill, who we're all working towards the same goal and if we are genuine in our efforts, then I can't see how the fact that the department's working on a strategy that's going to be bolstered and helped and supported by this bill is going to take away from any other work. So I think that look at the positives, Michelle. I think it's great that we're all on the same page.
You had talked about, in a few of the answers, the issue around staff retention. You talked about people, maybe getting trained and then going off to other countries. Could you talk a bit more about that and how you would see this legislation maybe helping address that problem of retention?
So, really, from and I suppose the department and the assembly itself and the people proposing the bill will have their own views, but from my point of view, it's looking at a plan is about what actions need to be taken to resolve the issues that are facing us, having an understanding and analysis of the issues. So if one of the issues is retention, then what are the issues facing that retention? What are the actions that need to be taken in order to address that? And I think in any plan, it's about the actions. So we've already discussed an awful lot of the ideas, but there's no action around those ideas. There hasn't been any action since I've been dealing with the department since 2019 on this particular issue. And it's not because department officials aren't listening. I think they're listening. I think they understand. I think they're in agreement. But I think there's one vital piece missing, and that's the action plan. And sometimes maybe I get a feeling that unless there's a priority given to an action plan, then department officials will have another meeting, talking about strategy and never going anywhere with it. So we've discussed a few ideas around that retention. Retention obviously is to do with pay and conditions. Part of the conditions within Irish medium education is workload and the extra workload. Part of the issues with retention of people who have maybe left for a few years. Now, it's good that people can get an opportunity to go off for a few years and do other things, but it's how we get them back. There are ideas about that, but there's no action around it. So I come back to this. We're in agreement about the measures that can be taken and a broad agreement about all of the recommendations, but it's how you bring that into action, and that's the missing piece here.
And is it the statutory, I guess, of the legislation of itself makes this happen, provides the certainty of the action, I suppose, maybe rather than the content itself? It's the fact that there will be statutory weight behind doing the workforce plan that gives you confidence. Would that be fair, that this is something that could be realised rather than just agreed upon?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. The last thing I was going to ask, and it touches again on, I think David had talked about other jurisdictions. It's asking about the immersive education, and you guys then had got into the kind of the idea of immersive education. You'd said that there's a lot of interest in locally in what you're doing, but is there anything that's happening in some of those other countries that you think would be useful or could be applied here to help with the Irish medium sector?
Did I jump in there?
Yeah, Wales.
So, of course, Wales is a big issue. You know, when Michael was talking to David there about that particular question, I was sort of trying to get my head. I'm always trying to get my head round a way that you can impress on people who don't speak Irish or who don't speak another language what an immersive education could be like. So, if you imagine teaching in the British school in Barcelona, where all the children in the class maybe are Spanish speakers or Arabic speakers or different languages, and you're teaching maths through English, and you need to basically teach English and teach maths at the same time and really get them sort of going that way. That's a bit of an idea. And I've had both two visitors to the school recently that really impacted that. One was a teacher who had worked in our school and who was now working just there. It was actually the British school in Lisbon, and came back and was talking about the similarities between working in an immersive setting here and working in Lisbon. And the second visitor we had was the principal of the School for the Deaf in Jordanstown, who is looking at signing and the fact that sign language is a recognised language with its own, and the pupils who come to her school, you know, a lot of them are partially hearing, but required to learn this new language. And well, it's not exactly the same, of course it's not. There are lessons to learn in the way that, you know, we emphasise the use in every day outside of the classroom, both inside of the classroom, and they're trying to create an immersive environment by which those children can learn to sign. So, you know, there are lessons to be learned across the board that we can learn. Yes, Wales is probably a very good example of where the education system has benefited from strong and focused legislation that supports, you know, the use of the language and the use and the promotion of the benefits of bilingualism throughout the whole society, and that's maybe something that we can look to as well.
That's great. Thank you very much, folks. Appreciate the answers.
Thank you, Michelle. So no other indications at this stage. So I just had one final question. Look, if we don't feel in a position to answer it, it's okay. It's just on the specifics of the bill. Was going back to sort of my initial questions, there was a fair bit of concern raised around those EA services going into that immersive setting, and there being no Irish specialists or input coming in from that at all, really. Do you think it would be helpful for the bill to specify, when we're talking about workforce, that we're talking about more than school staff, that it needs to maybe specify that the Education Authority needs to be part of this, because that it all links in to what happens in your school?
If the Education Authority isn't involved, I'm not sure how many of the actions will be taken forward, because an awful lot of it is around school improvement, teacher professional learning, and those sort of issues, and the support for schools. So schools are picking up the slack at the minute because there aren't people helping us. So that would be important. I also think that SIA also has a role here, and I know in a way that's a slightly different issue, but in fact the big barriers to SIA tell us, is in terms of workforce, that they don't have the people to do the work for us, even if they did have the budget.
I think that's helpful. Just I suppose my slight worry every time I think about this bill is that we have a department who have sort of set out their stall. We don't think this is necessary, and I worry, will they find a way to do as little as possible with it? And if they could just make it about teacher supply, then they can maybe just do that, which is helpful. But it's classroom assistants, it's local impact teams, it's SIA staff, it's all of that.
Definitely, the work of the EA is central to school improvement all over, and supporting staff. And if ideally you would have a member of each team or each area of work in the EA that has an Irish medium background or can support Irish medium schools, and that's maybe something to change. Now, whether or not this bill would deliver that, but it's definitely something that's required.
We can reflect on. Okay, look, thank you for your time today. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Now, just as the witnesses are making their way out, I should point out for any of the members joining online, I think it had been suggested that there would be an option to hear the presentation in English. So apologies for anybody who was expecting that and wasn't able to access it. But a full copy of the Hansard in English will be provided for all members. Okay. Are there any actions at this stage arising from the briefing that members want to pick up, or are we content to add that to the evidence for the bill? Content? No other actions arising? Okay. So, members, that takes us on to item 7 on the agenda, and this is an oral briefing from Children in Northern Ireland on the Education Holiday Meal Payments Bill. So just while the witnesses are coming through, I'd refer members to a briefing note from the committee clerk at page 44 of your packs, and then the written submission provided by CTCNI at page 4 of your tabled papers. And while the witnesses are coming through, would just advise members that joining us today is Dr. Ernest Purvis, Head of Policy with CTCNI, and Bethany Ebron, Chief Executive Officer from the Community Intercultural Programme. So just let you guys get settled, and then we can make a start. So thank you for joining us today, and thank you for your briefing paper, which was really comprehensive. So I'm really just going to invite you to make any opening initial remarks, and then we'll hopefully have plenty of time for question and answer. So over to yourselves.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the committee for the opportunity to provide evidence today on behalf of children in Northern Ireland in relation to the Education Holiday Meal Payments Bill. I'm joined by Bethany Ebron, Chief Executive of Community Intercultural Programme, one of our partners and an organisation that meets the needs of communities in the Armagh, Banbridge and Craigavon area. CTCNI is the regional umbrella organisation for the children's sector in Northern Ireland. We represent over 130 member organisations and work across policy, participation, training, safeguarding and direct family support. For almost a decade, we have also been directly involved in tackling holiday hunger and child food insecurity through community-based programmes delivered alongside local partners across Northern Ireland. We strongly support the overall intent and principles of this bill. In our view, it represents a practical, proportionate and preventative intervention which would provide meaningful support to tens of thousands of children and families across Northern Ireland during school holiday periods. Our position is informed not only by policy analysis and research, but by almost a decade of direct delivery experience working alongside children, young people, families and community organisations. Since 2016, CTCNI and our partners have been delivering holiday programmes in response to concerns raised by youth clubs, family centres and local community groups about increasing levels of food insecurity during school holidays. Over time, we've developed a community-based model that combines healthy food, physical activities, youth work and family support. And in the last year alone, our main programmes supported over 1,600 children and young people, provided more than 32,000 meals and snacks, and distributed almost 2,500 food parcels to families across Northern Ireland. We work in Carrickfergus, Downpatrick, Portadown, Limavady and Irvinstown, and from this summer we'll also be providing additional support in Belfast and Dungannon. I'd like to put on record our sincere thanks and appreciation to all our funders, past and present, the National Lottery Community Fund, Meals and More and Cisco Ireland, the Maclay Foundation, the Dennis Lynn Foundation, BBC Children in Need and the Public Health Agency, without whom this support would not be possible. Through this work, we've seen firsthand both the scale of need and the positive impact that access to food and activities can have on children's well-being, confidence, health and social development. But we've also seen the limitations of relying on charitable and community responses to address what is ultimately a structural issue linked to poverty and low income. The evidence presented in our written submission highlights the wider context facing many families in Northern Ireland today. Around 67,000 children are currently estimated to be living in absolute poverty, and more than 90,000 children are entitled to free school meals. Research also shows that children are disproportionately affected by poverty and food insecurity, and many families continue to experience significant pressures from rising food and energy costs. Through our own work, we see the reality behind those statistics every day. We see children arriving at holiday programmes with empty lunchboxes. We see children asking to take food home to support their families. We see families struggling to replace basic clothing and shoes for their children because of financial hardship. This should not be happening, and every one of us should pause and reflect on why we are allowing this to happen. At its core, this bill does raise the question of whether children in Northern Ireland should continue to receive less support during school holidays than children living elsewhere across these islands. In CNI's view, the evidence increasingly shows that Northern Ireland is lagging significantly behind other jurisdictions in both the scale of support available to children experiencing poverty and the ambition of policy responses to holiday hunger and food insecurity. Northern Ireland is now the only region in the UK without a dedicated government-funded holiday food and activities programme for children in need. We are also the only jurisdiction across the UK and Ireland without any form of universal free school meal provision. Since 2023, when the decision was taken by the Department of Education in Northern Ireland to cease the school holiday food grant, the Irish government has nearly completed a phased rollout of universal school meals for primary schools, allocating €300 million to cover all remaining schools from 2025 and launched the holiday hunger pilot. The Scottish Government has continued to roll out universal free school meals for children up to primary 5 and widened eligibility for older children through the Scottish Child Payment. The Welsh Government has completed the rollout of universal free school meals so that every child up to and including year 6 is now able to receive a free school meal every day. The UK Government has committed £600 million to extend the holiday activities and food programme until 2028 and widened eligibility for free school meals to include every child in England whose household is in receipt of universal credit, supporting approximately 500,000 more children. It is completely unacceptable and unsustainable to allow this disparity in support available to children in Northern Ireland compared to their peers elsewhere to grow and the gap to widen. It is unfair, unjust, and frankly shameful that children facing disadvantage and our lowest income families are struggling and do not have access to support that is available elsewhere. Other governments and administrations have recognised the importance of these initiatives, and acknowledge the harm that food insecurity inflicts upon a child, so must we. A particularly important aspect of our evidence is the voice and experience of children and young people themselves. Through our youth advisory group, young people with lived experience of poverty and food insecurity have undertaken research, engaged with policymakers, and developed practical recommendations for change. Their 2023 research project surveyed over 200 young people across Northern Ireland and found that almost half were worried about their parents not having enough money for essentials. A fifth said they were experiencing hunger more often. 1 in 7 reported skipping meals because they could not afford food, and nearly 1 in 5 said they struggled to concentrate in school because of hunger or worries about food. While these findings are not representative of all children, they remain deeply concerning, and they reinforce a fundamental truth: that poverty and food insecurity are having a detrimental impact on children's health, well-being, education, and participation in everyday life across Northern Ireland. From CTCNI's perspective, the previous school holiday food grant scheme played an important role in helping families manage these pressures. It was targeted, relatively straightforward to administer, and it reached families at scale. Its removal in 2023 was felt very quickly by many of the communities and families we support. We therefore welcome the Bill's proposal to place holiday meal payments on a statutory footing. We believe this would provide greater certainty and protection for families in the future, while also recognising the importance of ensuring children can access adequate nutrition during holiday periods. We also welcome the flexibility provided within the bill around regulation-making powers and the provisions relating to commencement, particularly given the importance of ensuring payments can continue during emergencies or periods of school closure if necessary. There should be no delay in issuing payments to families as soon as the legislative process is complete. At the same time, we would encourage continued consideration of wider issues related to free school meal eligibility. As outlined in our written evidence, there remains a significant gap between the number of children living in poverty and the number eligible for free school meals. While this may be outside the immediate scope of this bill, it is an important issue for future policy development. In closing, Chair, we believe this bill represents a much needed preventative investment in children and families. For CTCNI, the core issue is straightforward. No child should experience hunger during school holidays because their family cannot afford enough food. We'd like to thank the bill sponsor, Danny Baker, for bringing forward this piece of legislation and for meeting with our youth advisory group last year to discuss these issues. I'll finish with a quote from a young person we work with. Last week at our youth advisory group session in Portadown, I told the young people that we would be giving evidence to the committee on this bill, and I asked them what they would like to say to politicians who are working on it. The first young person turned to me and said, "There are parents, mostly single mothers, who are working 2 jobs and are still struggling to put food on the table. They can't even get childcare when their kids are not in school, so they can't work. We need to help them." Thank you. I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ernest. So, look, I'm always conscious when we're sort of at committee stage with a bill, we are dealing with the bill in front of us, and there's probably no great use of time to think of lots of other things that might have been great ideas at this stage. And sometimes our conversations have strayed into, but what about this, wouldn't have that been great? It is the bill in front of us. But I just wanted to ask one question, which may be at risk of straying into that territory. And you did reference some of this in your presentation, just in terms of the data and the research around children in receipt of free school meals and those who are not. is there research around which groups of children are most likely to be experiencing poverty or specifically be at risk of food insecurity? Because we hear quite a bit about groups of children who are maybe at that edge of entitlement to free school meals, and potentially that some of the impacts they might be experiencing might actually even be more significant. So just to get a sense, is there data or research around that? It's really thinking in terms of the targeting of the bill.
There's two things I would point to there. The first one is the equality impact assessment, or the human rights impact assessment of the discontinuation of the previous food grant scheme, which was published by the Department of Education. It highlighted that the loss of those payments would disproportionately impact children from black minority ethnic communities, traveller communities, and disabled children. I think it's really important to highlight that first and foremost. The other thing I would say in terms of the issue around free school meal eligibility, there was research and analysis conducted by Dr. Nicola Gleghorn from Queen's University that was commissioned by the Northern Ireland Children's Commissioner, which is really important modelling to show that shows really how many children living in poverty are missing out on that key support because of the current criteria. It's quite complex, and I'd probably encourage the committee to look into it directly with the people involved in that research. It more or less relates to how we measure poverty and how those criteria are set out. I think the paper highlighted that working families are disadvantaged by the current criteria, and that the criteria don't take into account family size the way measures of poverty do around the equalization of income.
If I could just ask then, and like, I don't want to make a big thing about this, just in terms of from your organisation's perspective, in terms of acknowledging that free school meals are a bit of a blunt instrument and don't have that nuance, are you content that the targeting of this bill is as effective as it could be given the measures available to us?
Yes, like we recognise the issues around eligibility are beyond the scope of this bill. And you know, the department will set out their rationale and their justification for the current criteria around eligibility. We've long argued that should be expanded and should cover all children impacted by poverty.
Perhaps for another time for committee to look at. So the only other question I have on this is just in terms of, you reference sort of the things that are in place in other jurisdictions, and that you characterise Northern Ireland as really lagging quite significantly behind there. In terms of other jurisdictions and the schemes that they have in place, is there a good evidence base around what the most effective interventions are in other jurisdictions around holiday hunger in particular?
I think the investment that the UK government and that extension of the holiday activities and food programme until 2028 is based on a lot of evidence that was gathered around the impact and the benefits for young people engaged in those programmes. It's a different model, it's a different context. My understanding is that 600 million is filtered, distributed down through local authorities in England who have more powers and wider remit than our local government. But yes, the short answer is there's examples in England of how that support benefits young people. There's examples in Scotland and Wales too. We actually did something different here. We introduced the school holiday food grant, and there is also research to back up that it was effective and supported families' food security during the COVID-19 pandemic.
No strong preference over a sort of a scheme versus a cash payment.
Yeah, we don't really see that as an either or. I mean, in terms of these are obviously policy choices. And there are pros and cons. As I mentioned, the direct payment reaches families at scale. It provides dignity, choice. The support we provide through our holiday programs and community-based work is difficult to scale. I'll be honest about that. It's resource intensive. We have invested a lot of time and effort in fundraising, and it's a constant struggle to get the support and the grants we need to sustain this work. But it is more holistic. If we look at our evaluations of the benefits, the positive impacts for young people, covers a wide range of indicators around health and well-being, education, skills, even getting young people into employment. So it's important to consider that as well.
Okay, no, thank you. That question of scalability is important. That is helpful. Deputy Chair, are you looking to come in?
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. Sorry I missed the start. I suppose it's true to say that not all children experience learning exactly the same, because as you said yourself, there's some children come into a classroom hungry and can't concentrate in the same way as their peers. But if we take it into the holiday period, if children are hungry during the holiday period, particularly during the summer when they're off school a couple of months, surely that has some impact in terms of activities that they might take part in during the summer, or preparations for going back to school and all of that. Would you have anything to say in regard to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll bring Bethany in shortly in a wee second and talk more about her experience of the young people she's working with directly. But the evidence shows that it harms children in multiple ways, in terms of their physical health, their mental health and well-being. There's evidence around learning loss, and the children impacted by poverty and food insecurity falling behind during those times when they're out of school. So we do see it as an educational issue as well. I'll just bring Bethany in if you want to add anything.
Yep. So thank you for having me here today as well. Delighted to be a community partner for children in Northern Ireland and delivering the Gets Active programme in Portadown. We have been delivering it now from 2017, so next year will be our 10th year. And that initiative has been great, for the children, and within our area we support from as far as outside Lurgan, Banbridge, Armagh, and the concept of coming in, getting your breakfast, eating with all the rest of the kids. Nobody's said you're allowed breakfast, you're not allowed breakfast, everybody's the same when they come through the door. Taking part in fun learning activities, that education element of the programme, should that be learning to cook, should that be learning skills like mini-medics, and that engagement in activities, arts, sports, science, getting a lunch as well, like the amount of kids that try some vegetables, which we really encourage. We've had salad bars where they have to eat salad bars to get the dessert and stuff as well. Has really been a positive step forward and encouraged kids to have something healthy as well. Then the other aspect then is supporting the family as a whole. So kids in the programs that they're taking part in, the parents know they're in a safe space. It's of no cost to parents. This programme's delivered completely free due to the funding that we receive from Three Children in Northern Ireland, from the likes of Macleay Foundation, Public Health Agency, Meals and More as well. So that wraparound support has been, really positive for the families that we support. Family days, the expense of taking your family for a day out during summer or during any of the holidays is extortionate. That provision of food, getting local organisations to come together to deliver information sessions, to provide signposts and support, simple things like health checks during those family days as well. Everything can be done at one time. Building those relationships with parents, and they're able to say, we need this kind of support, we need that kind of support, and then we're proactively then bringing in agencies to provide that, or signposting them to other people as well. So it's not just provision of food is so important for them to engage in those activities, but that whole wraparound support of the programme itself, you know, just takes it to a whole new level as well. Another element of it is our young leaders and our volunteers that help to design the programmes, and what they're getting out of it as well is massive too. But yeah, that's kind of gets active in a whole in our area.
So I suppose, just to sum it up then, that, you know, if children are going hungry during holiday periods when they're off school, it's a given that their learning is going to suffer in the longer term, and therefore the right thing to do would be to ensure that there is food sustainability, that they're not going hungry. Yeah. Okay, thanks for that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Michelle, you'd indicated next.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, folks. A couple of things to pick up on. Just firstly, this is more general, but there has been some challenge to the bill, and one of the premises has been, if you spend this money, something else in education has to be sacrificed. What would your response to that criticism be?
In terms of the Department of Education's
that their budget then will have to, something else will have to give for this money to be spent on this intervention.
We recognise the current pressures on public finances, that's very well rehearsed, that we understand that. But we would see this as a preventative investment rather than simply a cost pressure. So the long-term costs of child poverty and food insecurity, including those impacts on health, educational attainment and other public services, are substantial. Those costs are very substantial. I think last year I saw some estimates from organisations such as Trussell, and I may be wrong, of around £1 billion a year. The previous scheme also demonstrated that this kind of targeted support could be delivered relatively efficiently and at scale. So I think that's important to mention. And the other thing I would say is that we would really encourage consideration of cross-departmental approaches, given that the issue we're talking about, holiday hunger, impacts education, health and well-being simultaneously. Under the Children's Services Cooperation Act 2015, there is a legal duty for public authorities to collaborate and a legal imperative to pool resources where necessary in order to improve children's well-being. So I think all of that should be considered.
Okay, you have mentioned the previous school holiday food grant, and you mentioned that there was good evidence that when it was removed, that it had been effective. Can you speak more about what that evidence base was, how that was collated? Would be interesting to hear.
Yeah, again, the committee might want to look into this in more detail with Trussell. I think they have some data or some evidence that shows increased uptake or increased use of food banks following the end of the scheme. I mentioned the Department of Education's equality screening, which acknowledged a range of impacts. And there was an academic study by Eleni Spirelli and colleagues published in the journal BMC Public Health, which found that the payments supported low incomes food security during the COVID-19 pandemic. So that I think that's another thing potentially to look into in more detail.
Great, thank you, appreciate that.
Thank you. Michelle, David, you had indicated next.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks for your presentation so far. Look, probably first of all, I would say you're not going to find a politician, at least not an elected one, that's going to argue against feeding hungry children. I think the debate that we've had in this committee is largely over the how. And what I'm hearing from you, and honestly, and some of the programmes that you spoke about, is that you're about the outcomes here, that there are hungry children out there, there are families in poverty, and you believe that they need that extra bit of support in order to, whether that's in holiday periods or otherwise, to help them deal with that issue of poverty, whether that's through welfare, whatever that action is. Would you agree with that? First of all, is that where you're at? It's the outcome base, and you were talking there about sort of cross departmental. It sits almost naturally more cross departmental. I mean, our minister is in communities at the minute, so it's not a party political point. It seems to me that something like this sits more naturally with communities as lead, but as a cross executive priority, and that's why I asked us to write to the executive around that. Would you agree with that as well? That actually would be better if there's a number of departments involved in this, because it reaches a number of issues?
Absolutely, and I think the legal framework is there to support and facilitate that. I mentioned the Cooperation Act, and I would make one very simple point in terms of what you said, that a child doesn't care about the accounting, who the accounting officer is, what the departmental process is, or what specific department has policy responsibility or remit, and a family, they're in need of support. Whoever delivers it, whoever's in charge of it, getting it delivered and getting that action on the ground is the most important thing.
Listen, I agree with you. The people who benefit at the end, the child in this result, and the family, because a child isn't in poverty on his own, it's in poverty because their family is in poverty, will not care where it's coming from. I think from our point of view as legislators, it does matter the how, where that money comes from and what it's being taken from does matter. So I think what I'm hearing clearly is that you talked even about your the programs that you do that also give exercise, give training, give life coaching essentially alongside those things that those people need as well. The minister talked about that in the chamber. Do you think that investment in programs like that would be better than? I've heard you talk about direct payments giving a degree of dignity around that, but how do we make sure that that money is going to where it needs to go in terms of food? That's not demonising parents, by the way, because I think the vast majority of parents make the right choices, but we all have constituency offices here, we've all worked in our communities. There are some parents who do not make the right choices, and some who do that because they don't have the parenting skills, and others because they're making bad choices. Do you not think it would be better to do that work through programs like yours than through direct payments?
I think we're trying to deal with the bill that's in front of us. If we had seen government investment in a scheme similar to HAF in England, or if there were any proposals coming forward that we could engage with or scrutinise, I think we're sort of straying into hypothetical scenarios about what could or should be funded, and I think the short answer is we support what's in the bill, and what the effect that the bill would have in reinstating the food grant, the scheme that was there previously.
It is, you're supporting the outcome of the bill rather than necessarily the belief that it should be an educational intervention. My thing, to be honest with this, is it doesn't feel like an we talked earlier about how it will having food before they go into the classroom will help people concentrate. Absolutely, this won't do that. That's not the aim of this. This is about holiday periods. My contention would be that this isn't an educational intervention, this is a welfare intervention, and I have no problem with the intervention. I have no problem with the fact that those in poverty will get an uplift and be helped through that, but I don't think the right way to do it is to take it from one department and that one department to be education, because it doesn't seem to fit that easily for me.
Just a final comment, and then we'll move to the next member.
The main thing I would say in response to that is that from our perspective, the bill would effectively reinstate a scheme that was previously administered by the Department of Education and supported
during
by
an emergency period. I would put that. I'm not challenging you. I'm just putting that on the record. I think that is an issue I have. And Pat said about how he built the case that this could, in the long term, help a child's educational outcomes, but it would help their health outcomes. It would help them fulfil their economic potential. There's all sorts of lines we could draw on that. I just don't believe that the education department, with the financial struggles that it has, 600 million pressures looking into next year, is the department that can carry that, and certainly not carry it alone. And that's why I think we should be looking at it as an executive priority rather than that necessarily an educational one. But I don't disagree with the principle. Thank you.
David, Danny, you'd indicated.
Thank you, Chair, and Ernest, thank you so much. I know we've met quite a number of times, going way back even before the Assembly had came back. I had met you specifically on this issue and what I was hoping to achieve as a backbench MLA. Unfortunately, you're probably seeing and hearing what I'm up against a wee tiny bit, because that's pure gaslighting from the previous questioning, because the DUP voted against this bill in principle at the second stage. They had no interest in this going forward whatsoever. And it does need to be said on the record that, you know, this is the very least that education should be doing, because this is only one piece of a much wider puzzle to end child poverty. And it's not the silver bullet. It's far, far from it. In fact, we're going to need programs like you've been running to coincide with this, and much, much more. And, you know, when we talk about funding and saying it's well documented, you know, you have ministers who have their own budgets and their own priorities, and spending £11 million on AI or tens and tens of millions of pounds on Transform Aid, you know, that's their priority for that. But then they turn around and say they don't have the money to support children. And my question to you on the first one on that is, like, Ernest, I know, because I'd be a part of some of these schemes that you run, and not you the ones you run, but similar ones, that children go back to school malnourished. And when you're malnourished, you're weeks and months behind your peers. So how can you reach your full educational potential if you're hungry?
I mean, I think the evidence that we've set out shows that hunger affects children, affects their concentration, their behaviour, their participation. There is evidence around educational attainment too. So I would agree with that, and I would also call for greater investment in community-based support and the type of programs we run, which provide that holistic view of the child and support them on a range of levels, so that when they do return to school, or they start to think about moving into employment, that we're strengthening you know, them on so many levels. And we've seen the transformative effect of that. The work that we deliver here is about breaking the cycle of poverty, the vicious cycle, and we see the bill as part of the jigsaw on that too.
And Ernest, would you be concerned that, you know, this is one piece of legislation that is in front of us, but it's the only piece of legislation that I'm seeing coming through, and that other departments really aren't delivering on ending child poverty or poverty in general?
Some of the disparities that I've highlighted today in terms of support that's available in other jurisdictions and you know, places very, very close to us who've recognised these issues, who've acted upon them. We have continually highlighted that since the Assembly and Executive were restored in 24. It's included in our response to the anti-poverty strategy. We highlighted issues in terms of the department's consultation and the review of free school meal eligibility. So, I've tried to set out as clearly as possible today the support that's available elsewhere, and how we're lagging behind. And our position is that it's not acceptable, and it's not sustainable, and families here need so much more support from government.
Ernest, one thing that's cropped up a wee bit in committee, not so much in my own consultation, if I'm being brutally honest, but it has been that debate around vouchers versus cash payments. What would be your view on that there?
It's a more restrictive approach. It limits a parent's ability or a family's ability to meet their child's needs, and we're never going to be able to respond to any particular child or family circumstances, but a direct payment offers someone who's really struggling the dignity to respond to whatever situation they're in. Some holiday periods during the winter months, families will be grappling with high energy costs and other issues, depending on the timing of when they do food shopping and other bills that they're getting hit with. Direct payments is about giving families choice and dignity, and it's really important for our lowest income families.
Ernest, last wee point I want to say to you, because
Let's be very quick, brief point, Donny.
Yep. Yeah. I just want this to happen. I genuinely don't care what way it happens, but it must happen. What would you say if by this mandate that this gets voted down? What would that say about this assembly and the executive?
We would be disappointed if the bill didn't progress. Like, our understanding is that the Assembly agreed in principle when they voted at second stage, that they supported the principle of introducing this payment. It would be incredibly disappointing for the families and the children we support if it didn't happen.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
John, you've indicated that.
Yes, thank you. Very good presentation. Of course, the principle is meritorious. I used to do food bank deliveries myself, and it was heartbreaking to see hunger throughout the year. I know you've said it doesn't matter how this happens, and Danny's replicated that, which is disturbing from a legislator. Is probably why we've got so many problems in Stormont, because how things are delivered do matter, and who pays for it, and if it's affordable. There's no one in the room wants children to go hungry. Do you understand why some people have concerns that this money mightn't end up on food on the dinner table?
I think, the same argument would apply to Social Security, for example, or other direct financial assistance that we provide families. But I would say that we have to trust parents. I've never met a parent who would not do anything to meet their child's needs, who would not go out of their way. We're supporting parents who are skipping meals themselves, who are would go without in order to feed their children and provide their children what they need. We need to trust them, and we need to give them the dignity as well.
Yeah, look, I hear all that. First of all, there are parents who don't do the best for their children. You might never have met them in your professional experience, but I have, and they do exist. We need to see the world as it is, not how we would like it to be, especially when we're drafting legislation. I think there's a really telling part of your testimony when you said, well, look, it should be in the form of cash, not food vouchers, because, well, they might need it for something else. Heating, energy costs, something else during the week. And this seems to me, therefore, that in your mind, this isn't simply about holiday hunger. This is an additional benefit. And that's where we're getting into problems around the delivery of it, because then it should be sitting, for example, with the Department of Communities. Could you just give me further understanding about your understanding of this and why it wouldn't be suitable for food vouchers, which would then ensure that at least food was being purchased?
I think, you know, the issue of in terms of how can you guarantee that this money will be spent on food, I think you really need to go back to understand and consider the issue of food insecurity, what causes it, why are children going hungry, why are so many people in Northern Ireland using food banks. It's an issue of low income. It's the fact that those on the lowest incomes are struggling to meet the costs of basic essentials. So you can't look at food in isolation. You have to look at the issue in the round. That's what we mean when we talk about poverty and food insecurity. So I think, you know, being overly prescriptive and going down
with respect is overly prescriptive. It's called, and I just, the holiday hunger bill. It is for holidays and it is for hunger, and therefore for food. And this is where, you know, Stormont gets itself into difficulties. We should be precise and clear when it comes to legislation. We're not, you know, this is serious stuff. This is public money. We need to make sure it's spent in the most sustainable, effective way. And the answers you're giving me are rather vague. It's not a criticism, because I would absolutely expect you to come and want children to get more support. The question for us as legislators is how is the best way of doing it? Because money spent somewhere is not money spent somewhere else. And therefore, I'm saying this is an additional top up to benefits as opposed to a specific targeted holiday hunger, which is how you're describing it.
I disagree with that characterization. I just disagree with that characterization, because the gap that the issue that the bill seeks to address and what we support is the fact that when children are in school, they have access to school meals. And we as a society and our government has accepted that there's a group of a proportion of families that need that support, and that we should provide that food for children when they're in school. For some reason, we accept that those children should not receive support when they're not in school. And so that's what the food grant is about, and that's why we talk about holiday hunger. This payment would support those families who don't have access to school meals.
One vitally important follow-up, and you make a very good point, but
this would just be final comment, John.
School meals is guaranteed to go to school meals. We don't give the parents the extra value in their bank account that the school meals cost, and then say, well, then they can spend it as they wish. We actually provide the free school meal. So therefore, it would be more analogous, if you like, if you were trying to do something similar, would be to provide food or food vouchers as opposed to cash, if we were using the comparison.
Just in the time,
yeah,
honestly, I think it's appropriate you get the chance to respond, Ernest. Yeah.
Of course, we could do that. The short answer is the department
could do it. Yes,
could design any sort of scheme to provide food, but this is the bill we've got in front of us.
Okay, it is amendable. Yeah, thank you. Now, genuinely, and thank you for what you do, because my heart's in the same place as you. I just need to get the legislation right.
Okay, thank you, John. And I don't have any other indications. See, Danny has indicated, maybe perhaps just when we're sort of wrapping up the session at the end, are you wanting to respond, Danny, from the perspective as Bill's sponsor at this stage?
It was more just a point of clarity, but yeah, I can do that at the end if that's okay.
No, that's grand. Look, thank you both for your evidence, and we really do appreciate your time today. And there's actually plenty of things to pick up even beyond what's in the bill in front of us. So thank you both.
Thanks very much. Thanks.
Thanks.
So, members, if I can just check before I bring Danny in, and I would just ask that we probably, if we can avoid getting into a protracted back and forth on any issues. I think if there are members have particular issues with the bill, I would just want to remind in terms of the process here, absolutely at liberty to bring amendments through committee and to suggest changes that you believe would enhance the bill. So that's what this process is here for. So I would remind members of that. Don't think there are any other actions. I think maybe than just making sure through the clerk and our team that we do note some of those other issues for potential follow-up down the line in terms of forward work planning. But at that stage then I'll bring Danny in just for comment as bill sponsor, and then we can, I think, move on at that stage.
Yeah, and I totally agree with what you just said there, Chair. Look, I just want to say one last thing to be very clear. It's a policy intent is what I give to a drafter. I did not draft this legislation, so that so the members know that there. But when I say I don't care, it's about I don't care as long as we get this done. That means that we work together, and I've said this from the very beginning. I'll give you the house. If you want to put the curtains on, the carpets on, that's been said from second stage right through to all of the committee. If people want to bring forward amendments, I will work with them. They are not, we keep debating the principle of this bill, and that's a wee bit of a worry. So if you want good legislation, please come forward with the amendments and stop those taking wee digs from the side, because it's just pathetic, to be honest.
Okay, thank you, Danny. David, I'll bring you in.
Yeah, I'm not personalising with Danny. It's not an argument with Danny around this. It is around the principle of the bill and where the bill should sit, and I realise we might have disagreements on that, but I do actually think, in terms of just put on record, because I think for other panels coming before us, it is worthwhile them hearing this for those that might tune in to this. The issue at the heart of what's being discussed and where there's disagreement around the committee table is not about whether those who are hungry should have assistance or be fed. The argument that we're having is around where, if government has the wherewithal to provide that assistance, where that assistance should come from. And therefore, I'm sure when we hear, when Truss will come or others like that, I fully expect that they'll come and say that we welcome this support and it's great and we should make sure that hungry children are fed. That is not in contention. What is in contention is is this an educational intervention, and should it be paid for from the coffers of the Department of Education and the Department of Education alone? And that's just something I think worth putting on record. It's not an argument with Danny, but I think for those coming to speak to us, I think it's worth them. And that's what I'm hearing from John as well. I can't speak for John, but that's what I'm hearing.
Absolutely, and I don't think any witnesses coming to present at committee would expect anything less than a full discussion in the round around the appropriate policy intervention on any issue that we're discussing. Okay, I don't see any other indications, so are we content then? We'll add the evidence heard today to the papers for the committee's consideration of the bill. We agreed? Agreed. Okay. Members, we're just going to move on slightly out of sequence here. So for item 12 on the agenda, which is the committee bill, the bill proposing to allow all pupils the choice to wear trousers, we actually do have Maeve Corrigan from Assembly Legal Services, who was keen to brief us in person on this item, and in the interests of just the availability, if members are content, we'll take this item at this stage if we are all agreed. Agreed. And can I check, are we taking this item in closed session in terms of anything we'll be discussing? Yeah.
Are you? Yes.
Okay. Yes, so
okay,
propose.
We'll go into open then whenever we want to hazard any decision making. Is that okay? Yeah.
Okay, so there will be some decisions to be taken in all likelihood on this, but there will be some legal advice provided to members at this stage, or information brought through from legal services. So propose we take this first part of the item in closed session if we're agreed. Agreed.
Committee Room 29. Sound. Committee Room 29. Sound. Committee Room 29. Sound. Committee Room 29. Sound. Committee Room 29, 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 Sound.
Okay, so we are back into open session. So just to confirm for the record in terms of what was discussed in that session, the committee has agreed to approve what was a draft explanatory and financial memorandum in relation to the committee's proposed bill, and the text of a letter was also agreed to go to the Speaker, and we had agreement that the draft bill, the explanatory financial memorandum, along with that accompanying letter, will now be issued to go to the Speaker's office, and it will then be for the Speaker's office to undertake the legislative competence checks, which is the next stage in the process of seeing the bill introduced. It was also agreed that all of the evidence that the committee heard in relation to the committee bill would be collated and ready to be shared with the committee team who would be running the processes associated with the ad hoc committee that will need to be established to scrutinise the bill once introduced. And it was also agreed that the evidence gathered through the committee's citizen space in relation to the bill would be published on the committee page on the Assembly website. Hopefully that covers everything. I just want to check from if any members have anything they want to add, or are we all content that reflects the conversation? All agreed. The other thing I would like to do just at this stage is we have reached quite a significant milestone in terms of the preparation of the committee bill. There really is no more work for this committee to do on it. It is now going to be in the hands of others in the Assembly, and I would just like to put on record my thanks to the clerk, to her team, and to all of the other Assembly staff who were involved in producing this bill, particularly in legal services and the Bills Office. I think their input and their expertise and the speed with which they worked to deliver this really does need to be recognised on the public record, and I think they deserve the thanks and appreciation of the committee. Unless anyone has anything to add, I think we can move on. Kathy, you'd indicated there.
Yeah, Chair, just really briefly, I just want to concur with what you're saying there and thank the clerk and the team for all the work that's been done on this, and obviously the Bills Office and legal advice too, because it has been done really quickly, and I know it's a short bill. It's unfortunate that we have had to take these measures and we've had to do this, but I think the importance of it outweighs all of that. I'm just really pleased that we have reached this stage, and it's over to others now, as you said.
Thank you, Kathy. No, I think we'd all concur with that. Okay, so that moves us on then to what was item 8 on the agenda. We did just jump around in terms of the scheduling there, and I think I'm going to propose we move through items 8 and 9 at this stage, and then we'll maybe look at whether or not we need a comfort break at that stage. Item 8 on the agenda, it's written advice from Assembly Legal Services on it's the convention rights memorandum for both the private members' bills before committee. So we have those memos for both the Education Holiday Meals Payments Bill and the Irish Medium Education Workforce Plan Bill, pages 47 and 57 respectively, in your packs. The advice from Legal Services is very clear that the bills do not engage any convention rights, and that it was not felt necessary on that basis for a legal advisor to attend to brief committee. On that basis, does the committee agree to add both those memos to the respective bill reports? Is that agreed? Agreed. Item 9 on the agenda is the retention and disposal schedule for the General Teaching Council of Northern Ireland. So I would refer members to the Business Office guidance for the GTCNI retention and disposal schedule at page 69 of your packs, the PRONI notification of intention to lay the schedule at page 71, and the final version of the GTCNI retention and disposal schedule, which is at page 72 of your packs. So a bit of a preamble preamble I need to go through for members' reference, and then we will make a decision, have a discussion as required, and make a decision on this. So, in accordance with the Public Records Act NI 1923 and the Rules of Disposal of Documents Order 1925, Northern Ireland departments and the wider Northern Ireland public sector are required to develop and maintain a schedule which covers all records, regardless of format, which are created by each of their functional business areas. The legislation lays down the procedures both for the destruction of records deemed to have no long-term value and for the preservation and transfer to PRONI of records selected for permanent preservation. Once a schedule has been drafted by the public body, PRONI, in accordance with its statutory duties, will quality assure its contents and lay the schedule before the Assembly. The schedule is subject to the negative resolution procedure, and any member or committee may seek a resolution to pray for the preservation of specified records in a retention and disposal schedule. Assembly committees have a role in scrutinising the actions of their respective departments' retention and disposal schedules. The Committee for Communities has a scrutiny and coordinating role linked to its responsibility for scrutinising the Department of Communities and PRONI. So at this stage I need to ask members if anybody has any views on the GTCNI disposal and retention schedule that they want to raise at this stage. Not expecting a flurry of hands there, so on that basis I think it leaves me to put the question that the Committee for Education has considered the General Teaching Council for Northern Ireland disposal and retention schedule and has no objection to the schedule. Is that agreed? Agreed. Okay, thank you, members. So that takes us on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 10. And I think at this stage I might suggest, unless there's any issue, I think we are slightly ahead of time, just propose to take a brief comfort break, and then we'll return in a few moments for the next item on the agenda. We can just turn off the live feed.
Committee Room 29. Sound. 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 Committee Room 29, 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 sound.
So members, that is us back into open session, and it moves us on to item 10 on the agenda, which is a briefing from the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists in relation to the SL1 on the Special Educational Needs SEN Regulations 2026. So hopefully we'll get the witnesses online shortly, but while we're waiting just to get all that set up, as the witnesses are joining us online, I would refer members to the response from the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists at page 19 of tabled papers, and then at page 23 of tabled papers we have the response from the Royal College to the SEN regulations themselves. So joining us today we have Ruth Sedgwick, the head of the Northern Ireland office for the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists, and Sue McBride, policy advisor from the Royal College. So we're just checking, we're just waiting for witnesses to be available to join us. Now we are just slightly ahead of time, so if they're not available to join, I'm just going to propose that we move to item 11 on the agenda, which we can hopefully take fairly quickly. So apologies members for the jump in between items. So we'll move to item 11 while we wait for our witnesses to be available. Item 11 is the committee consideration of the SL1 Special Educational Needs SEN Regulations, and we have a memo from the clerk at page 47 of tabled papers. So we are still scheduled to hear from the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists today, but the memo in your packs draws together all of the work that the committee has undertaken in relation to these draft regulations and the various perspectives that we've heard in our evidence sessions. And as the memo advises, it has been suggested at this stage that members consider the issues raised over the course of the next week, and that we are in a position to bring the committee to the next stage of our consideration of these. So that may be, if members feel next week that they are in a position for the question to be put in terms of whether we agree those regulations, or whether there is a need for perhaps a slightly longer report to be put together for members to reflect on where we are at in our scrutiny, or if there are specific regulations or specific issues that we want to refer back to the department for either further clarity, further reassurance, or if committee has a clear position around anything that we consider needs to be revised, redrafted, or indeed added or removed from the regulations. So we are very conscious this is a big piece of work. I have no interest in rushing the process. So I'm happy, perhaps if the clerk wants to speak to it first of all, and then I'll just get a sense from members if they feel that they are likely to be in a position to bring some sort of clear positions in terms of next steps to next week's meeting. Is there anything you want to add beyond the content of the memo, or in terms of next steps?
Yeah, I mean the memo is setting out really the procedural things that pertain to this item of business. And it also recaps on the steps that the committee has taken to date, and the perspectives heard. So obviously the main perspectives heard have been from the research in the first point on an evidence basis, and then the Children's Law Centre from a rights basis and a legal perspective. And then the practitioner perspective of the teaching and other professionals unions. So today we were going to hear a specialist view, and that's coming up obviously from the Royal College. Really all of this is to try to help members come to a decision as to whether they're content for the department to make this statutory rule on these regs as they stand, and what feedback they really feel the department needs, if any, to make changes to the rule, and that is obviously for the department then to decide. So yeah, to try to bring your thinking together really on the specific regs. I mean, it's hard, I think, from this perspective to separate the regulations from the code of practice, because the code of practice implement the regulations, and a lot of stakeholders have fed back about the workability of the regulations, of the code of practice, but mainly the committee will want to try to focus on the regulations and feedback on that, and feedback on the code of practice as a secondary kind of helpful.
That's helpful. I'll just at this stage, I think again, there's been some thank yous in committee today. I would just want to put on record my thanks to the senior assistant clerk for the work on this, because this is a big piece of work, big piece of work, and I think we have identified a real challenge in trying to connect deliberations of a committee and the assembly from 10 years ago with what we have in front of us now, and trying to make sure that what's before us aligns with that, but is also reflective of the current situation. So it is not a straightforward process to get over the line. So I mean, other than to say, there may well be specific regulations that I would like to suggest, and I'll put something through the clerk, which can be circulated, where I think there may be regulations that need to be looked at, but I think it's important that we have input from all around the table here. So Deputy Chair, is there anything you want to add at this stage?
Chair, I'm going to be guided by the Children's Law Centre on this, as I've stated here on a number of occasions. I mean, they're held in the highest of esteem. They have an excellent reputation in terms of advocacy, particularly for children with special educational needs. And so for that reason, I'm going to wait until they come to a position before we would. And for that reason, I'm suggesting that there's a pause in this process, and we wait until I made the suggestion last week that the Children's Law Centre and the department should sit down together and work through all of this, so that they come together to this committee and present a united front on all of this. The last thing we need is another row. We've already had rows over the restrictive practices and other issues, so what we need is agreement on this, and when that happens, I'm more than happy to support this going through.
So would just to be clear, Deputy Chair, then would your position when we come to look at this next week, and members maybe have had the time to reflect, because it is a detailed report that's in front of us there at item 11, that you wouldn't be proposing that we reach the stage of putting the question around this? You feel there is substantially more work and evidence that's needed to be heard? No, that's fine. Look, and my sense would be that I think we would be jumping the gun if we put the question next week. That would be my sense. I certainly think that while we wait for other stakeholders and for the department to engage with them, as they have suggested in their evidence sessions that they continue to be open to do, I think there may well be things that we can continue to go back to the department with that reflect the evidence we've heard, and try and get as much assurance and clarity as we can. Okay, just checking any other indications from any other members around this.
Chair, could I just say, sure. It's not good enough, I think, for the department just to say the Children's Law Centre is wrong and we're right. That's not how this should be dealt with. This is an issue of incredible importance, and it needs to be got right. And if the department are saying the Children's Law Centre is wrong, then let them produce the evidence to show where they are wrong and how they are wrong, and that's what needs to be done. So, shall I?
David, I think you were looking to come in there.
I in terms of the report and so on, I'd rather confer with colleagues over the next period of days, and I'll maybe indicate to you privately where we're at. But I think, I'll come back next week with a
that's absolutely fine. I think that's why it was appropriate for this to be flagged with members today, but possibly wanted to take away for consideration. Can I check if there's anyone online wants to come in on this item? Danny, you've indicated there.
Yeah, just to reinforce what Pat said, I think it's very important that the department knows that is a position that certainly some of the members are coming to here, that without that almost green light from the Children's Law Centre, there's no way we're going to be able to agree them, because we did hear that it's potentially unlawful, and we did hear that this could actually set us back even further, where we've been on record saying reform is needed, but we need progressive reform and not regressive. And I'd be deeply concerned if the department isn't really engaging at speed with the Children's Law Centre and also everyone else who raised concerns. It wasn't just the Children's Law Centre.
Thank you. Danny, Michelle?
No, I wanted to echo your thanks for the report, which is really detailed and really excellent and very helpful to members. But also it does highlight a lot of concerns and issues, especially even with the quality of the responses that we got to our scrutiny points. So I think there's a fair bit of work here still to do to be satisfied that we can progress this. So yeah, I think next week will be too soon still for that, even with that week. And just wanted to reflect that.
Thank you, Michelle. Not seeing any other indications. I think at this stage, for me, my sense of it would be that what I wouldn't want to do is to have a pause that is implemented and us really trusting that the department will then go away and do that engagement work. I think we would need to be in very clear communication with the department around what the committee would expect the next steps to look like. And I think if there is more information that stakeholders want to bring us, because I think a lot of the feedback that I sense from stakeholders is they need more time with this before they can really provide final definitive advice. I think a lot of the information we've heard has felt like this is our initial reaction. So I think it might be an opportunity next week again to go out to stakeholders to really get a sense, how long do you need with this to come back with your sort of final position on where you sit with the regulations, and then that could potentially help us frame our final response on this. So content then, I think, around the room that we all take this away, reflect, maybe consult with our own party groups, and come back with hopefully a way forward through this. But I would just want to emphasise I would not want to get into a scenario where we are just trusting this to the department to undertake some process that will bring it to conclusion. I think we would need to set out clearly what we're expecting as the next step on that. Okay, I think we've got agreement unless there's any other indications, and I can see we have our witnesses now online for item 10. So are we content then to dispose of item 11 and return to that next week? Agreed. Item 10 then. So I'll quickly just do the preamble. Just as a reminder, it's an oral briefing from the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists on the SL1, the Special Educational Needs SEN Regulations 2026. And we have joining us today Ruth Sedgwick, Head of the Northern Ireland Office for the Royal College, and Sue McBride, Policy Advisor for the Royal College. You're both very welcome today. I think the last time we were in your company, we were in cracking jokes with May McFetridge, so it was a slightly different context for the Voice Box Awards, which was a brilliant event. I think we should have been something perhaps as a committee we should have recognised. It really was an absolutely brilliant event, and the children and young people clearly had an absolute ball. So I don't know quite why being subjected to some of the jokes from the MLAs around the table here, but it was a really, really great event.
Something very different.
Thank you. Can I just say, I had absolutely no confidence in the voting whatsoever.
Because you did win.
You think it was rigged?
Some sort of appeal.
I was disappointed that John didn't wear his hat to committee.
Yes, there was some interesting headwear worn at one point in proceedings. But moving on to the item at hand, I want to thank you for offering your time to committee to speak to these regulations specifically. I don't know if you heard any of the previous conversation. The committee is working its way through the regulations, and it's certainly proving to be a lengthier process than perhaps might have at first been anticipated. I think it's great to hear from an organisation today which is going to bring a perspective from really the health and the allied health professional perspective and how that interacts with the education system. So it's really timely to hear from you. So look, I'm happy to hand over for any initial presentation. We are looking to bring the briefing in around 30 minutes if possible in total. So if we can all try and work to that time scale. But over to yourselves.
Thank you so much, Chair. We just have a few minutes of an opening to say so that we've got plenty of time for your questions. So just to say, Chair and committee members, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the RCSLT Northern Ireland regarding the proposed SEN regulations, the revised code, the graduated response framework and the enhanced support model, because they really do nearly come together as a package. As a professional body for speech and language therapists, our focus is on what these proposals will mean for children and young people with speech, language and communication needs, or SLCN, and for those that support them every day in schools and services. We really do welcome the ambition behind these reforms, and we recognise that the current system is under pressure and that change is needed. However, we have concerns that as currently drafted, these proposals do not provide sufficient clarity on how children with SLCN will be identified, supported and reviewed. Our concern begins with early identification and ensuring children are recognised before they reach the crisis point. SLCN can be hidden. Children may appear to cope well, or they could be presenting with anxiety, emotional dysregulation, behaviour that challenges, or learning difficulties without anyone recognising that SLCN could be the underlying issue. And if we look at evidence from the Early Language Support for Every Child, or ELSEC interim report published in England earlier this year, they found that 60% of children screened had previously unidentified needs. That was higher than they even anticipated. And while this is not Northern Ireland data, it highlights the potential scale of hidden need and reinforces the importance of early identification and communication-focused supports within educational settings. We have some concerns about the response framework. We don't feel that it adequately reflects SLCN. It doesn't clearly reference speech and language therapists, provide pathways for liaison or referral, or demonstrate clearly how SLCN should be identified and escalated. And really on the ground, I think it's important to say that we continue and our members continue to face significant workforce pressures. We previously highlighted an 85% increase in the number of children waiting for speech and language therapy between 2021 and 23. And while we're waiting for updated figures, the GTCNI data continues to show us that year on year numbers continue to increase, and that's without taking into account the potential hidden needs. Waiting lists are long. There is no sustainable way around this challenge without increasing workforce capacity and securing additional commissioned speech and language therapy posts. We do support universal, targeted and specialist levels of support, such as the balance system, which is operating now within the trusts, and we feel there'd be real value in DE linking into this approach so that health and education can identify and support children through shared models and pathways. Many children can be helped with these universal communication-rich environments, and some need the more targeted interventions, and others will always require specialist speech and language therapist input. However, there remains limited direct speech and language therapy representation informing policy and strategic decision-making within education itself. And we would advocate for the secondment of an SLT into the departments based on, we can just look to the Welsh approach of embedding SLT expertise within their education leadership and government structures. Speech, language and communication is fundamental for learning, participation and inclusion, and specialist expertise therefore must inform these reforms. There are examples I've mentioned elsewhere that demonstrate what joint working could look like if we think to that ELSEC programme that uses joint health and education funding, as well as the Department of Education and Youth in Ireland now. These are two examples of recognising that SLCN sits across both departments, health and education. And it reflects something that we have consistently said. Speech and language therapy needs to be embedded within education. We need protected and commissioned posts, as outlined within the SEN reform agenda last year, allowing for appropriate governance, supervision and multidisciplinary working. We support reform, but it must be implemented carefully and realistically. We're concerned that the proposed SEN regulations, the revised code, the graduate response and the enhanced support model are progressing simultaneously without sufficient clarity on implementation, accountability, workforce planning or governance. And it makes it difficult to fully assess how these reforms can operate together in practice and whether health and education systems are able to align effectively. So our message today is clear. Dedicated SLT leadership across both departments of health and education, joint commissioning of SLT posts, sustained workforce planning and investment to support early identification and intervention. And above all, the reforms must be properly resourced and given the time required to be implemented effectively, consistently and sustainably. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think you successfully brought that in on 4 minutes, so that's great. Look, it's hard. Look, I think we have found this with almost every aspect of the graduated response, the enhanced support model, the draft regs. It's where to begin. It's just it's very big and it's all connected. So it's hard to separate it out and say, well, just look at one thing or another. I'll try to just raise some of the issues in relation to the draft regulations first of all, if that's okay, and I'll try and be brief and clear in my question. One of the things that you highlighted in your consultation response was that you're concerned the regulations may not be specific enough to ensure that the right health advice or that health advice is sought from the right health professional for a child or young person with speech and language needs. would you have a concern that we could, with this, I think the actual wording is medical advice medical advice should be sought from a healthcare professional identified as appropriate. Would you have concerns around that in terms of a child or young person, that they may not actually get advice that informs their statement in the assessment process from the right person?
I think, like Ruth had just said in the opening speech, a lot of children with speech, language and communication needs are going to be unidentified and hidden. The other problem that we have for some of these children and young people is if they are on a wait list to be seen by speech and language therapy, you are not getting the correct advice and support for that young person because they have not yet been assessed by the statement and processes going through. Then by the time that's done, the statement could already be in place. So it's when that advice then goes through, and if the statement is reopened, for that advice to be entered into it.
So making sure that the process is responsive, so when an assessment is carried out, that is, and again, maybe around data sharing, which we hear a lot, that there is some sort of process by which that gets fed into the education system, that it doesn't just sit in an isolated silo, that a speech and language assessment has been done somewhere else.
Yeah, because it could be, unless it's an annual review, and with this, the timeframes for the reviews are going to be at key transition points. So effectively then, is it going to be longer before that information is given to the relevant people to be able to make an informed decision on that statement?
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. The other thing I wanted to ask just about the regs is there has been quite a bit of discussion around where health advice should sit on the statement, and concerns that if it goes into part 6 that it wouldn't carry appeal rights at sendist. Do you have a sense, based on comparing even how things operate now and what's in the draft regulations, of where speech and language provision in a statement should sit? Should it be in section 3 or section 6 of a statement?
I guess we have, obviously you've seen our statement, and we have been reflecting on this and listening to the previous people that have been in to give you evidence too. And we wanted to just clarify, I guess, our position regarding speech and language therapy provision. And really our concern, it's not with recognising that speech, language and communication needs are educational needs, because they clearly are, as they directly impact access to learning and participation in the curriculum. But rather, I guess what we were trying to talk about in our statement was about our members having experienced difficulties where provision has been framed in an overly rigid or formulaic way, which is worrying and can really limit the clinician's ability to respond flexibly to children and young people's, I guess, changing communication profiles and their evolving needs. So our position is that provision should be clearly identified as an educational need where appropriate. But we still need to make sure that intervention can be determined by professional and clinical judgment, and make sure that there's space for ongoing review and evidence-based practice. Is there anything else you want to add about that, or are you?
No, no, that's fine. Look, there may be things I come back to, but I want to make sure all members do have a chance to come in. So, Deputy Chair, I'll just bring you.
Okay, thanks for that. You'll be familiar with the Education and Health Oversight Group. I'm just wondering, have you had any engagement with that group?
We haven't personally had engagement with the group. We've heard, I guess, in terms from yourselves and watching the last 2 weeks, we know that there is work. We know that our chief AHP officer does sit on these groups. We understand that there's good work commencing on the ground between the EA and SLTs. We know that, I'm not sure if you're aware, that there's hopefully going to be work coming to support a programme that looks at reviewing language and communication across preschool, primary and post-primary, with the EA and SLT supporting that. So we think that's a really good opportunity coming, we hope. But yeah, we appreciate that. I think it would be really great to see even more joined up collaboration at a higher level, so that when things are at that development stage, things are done, together at the start with operation realities from both education and health in mind.
Okay, thanks for that. And you've said you've listened to previous witnesses giving evidence to the committee, and I suppose the foremost of that group would have been the Children's Law Centre. And And they are asking that this process be paused so that there can be greater scrutiny and clarification. Would your own organisation be of the same mind?
Yeah, we would support what they're saying.
Okay. That's all I have, Chair. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deputy Chair, I don't have a sight of who's online. It's in case anyone is indicated. Obviously, David indicated if you want to come in. Is there anyone also online? Has just so I can see. John has indicated there if you want to come in.
Just slightly broader and sooner. Thank you for all the work you do for young people. You mentioned that pilot that was identifying young people far earlier. That seems to me something that's vital. If we're identifying the children at the very earliest stage, that's the early language support for every child.
Yeah.
That will make the outcomes much better.
Yeah. So that was a joint initiative that the UK government had under the Change Programme in 2023. So what they did is they brought together expert teams that they called Pathfinders, which were made up of speech and language therapists and speech and language therapy assistants to allow innovative ways of working. So I think there was 9 areas altogether. So they went into early years and into primary schools to deliver universal and targeted intervention. But as we said earlier, the findings were in some areas, the majority of children, up to 60%, had not been identified as having any speech, language or communication needs for this. So they were completely hidden. So that screening and the power of health and education working together to identify these children and young people, being able to implement the appropriate universal and targeted approaches meant then that closed the gap for some of these children. And then those that did require the specialist support were very clear and able to go on to receive that.
Okay, one final question, and I suppose any of these things rely on resource to actually do things. So just again, a slightly broader question, but while we have you, I'm picking up you have people who are getting qualified in your area. They come out with their degree, but there's not posts for them, and then they have to go to England. So is this a problem?
This is something that's very new, John. Actually, that we're just hearing now from some newly qualified SLTs. So we have our 2019 Speech and Language Therapy Workforce Review, and it said that we need 40 graduates a year by 2024, and we sat at a baseline of 28 for a few years, and we really welcomed the Minister last year, the Health Minister's decision to increase that to 56. So we had that 100% increase last year. However, what we have seen for the first time last year is that our 2025 cohort did not all secure Band 5 posts and are now going to be entering competition with the 2026 cohort for this limited number of Band 5 positions. And I guess it just raises, just as you're saying, these questions about workforce planning. We know demand for our services continues to rise across all, adults as well as the SEN ones that we've been talking about. But the expansion in those training places has not been accompanied by a corresponding increase in commissioned permanent posts. Really do need a more coordinated approach to workforce planning and service investment. There's a real risk, just as you said, that actually we're going to be training, and our members on the ground are working really hard to support placements for this increased number of students, to only train them and then lose them. And just last week I was down in the south at a conference, and they were talking about this wonderful Department of Education and Youth in Ireland that is now directly funding, I think it's 350 SLT posts coming up within the next few years. 50 of them started this week within schools. And they're like, we don't have enough SLTs in Ireland, so send your SLTs down here. And we want to keep them. So we are worried that, and in all seriousness, we do really need those two departments to work together at all levels, but to be commissioning together. We really see that that's where we have to be at.
And we've had emails from, newly qualified members who have said that they have no option and they have gone to England so they can go and
some
further abroad,
going to Dubai, going over to Australia, New Zealand to work because we don't have the post for them, and we don't want that to happen, obviously.
Yeah, thanks. That directly relates to SEN, then I think that's really important. An early intervention. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a chair.
Thank you, John. Cara, you'd indicated there.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much, ladies, for your time and the important work that you do. I had a question earlier to our Irish medium panel, and you might not have this to hand, but one of the challenges I think is around ensuring the Irish medium education have the right support, particularly for the children who have DLD. Is there anything more we as a committee do you think we could be doing on that, or any feedback you'd like to give us on how it can be improved?
That is a very good question.
It's okay if you don't have the answer. It's just I'm mindful of it might be a bit of a gap within Irish medium, and just really keen to hear if there's anything more we can do.
That is certainly something I don't think we've ever been asked or thought about specifically with DLD, but it is something that more and more is coming up for us, and it's this. We have really great links with Corlean na Gael, Scoileachta, with Altram, so with those Irish medium organisations, we were training them in communication last week, wasn't it? So we have lovely connections with them, and we know that they would absolutely love, and sometimes we get asked how many SLTs can speak Irish and can deliver the therapy in Irish. We don't have an answer to a lot of those questions. We know that, say, I think, we could end up going along the lines of in Wales, where they need to have a certain number of Welsh-speaking speech and language therapy students to take up their training places. However, they're not sure where they're going to end up. So it's really something that's quite hard to work out, if that member can, and we do have some members that will speak fluent Irish, but we don't know where they're necessarily going to end up working, and will they end up working within an Irish medium setting. So it's something that's really tricky to try and
count and
and plan for, but we are really open, I would say, Cara, to conversations around that and see where do we need to be trying to open doors and move things. So definitely happy to have another conversation about that.
Thank you so much. It is fascinating because with that panel as well, they said a lot of the talent is going to Australia as well. So sadly, the brain drain, I think, is having a real impact when it comes to teaching across our different sectors. But no, thank you so much. And if I and any of my targeted questions get any answers, I'll forward them on to yourselves. Thank you so much.
Oh, yes, please do. Please do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cara. No other indications at this stage, so I think that's probably bringing the session to a close. I maybe just wanted to finish with my kind of an observation, which might be a question. So we've asked some questions around the regs themselves and wanting to make sure that statements that come out the other end of these processes have the right supports in place for children with speech and language needs. But you have highlighted quite clearly in your evidence that you think it is absolutely vital that speech and language expertise and supports are embedded into the education system, and that's done in partnership with health. Could you briefly set out what you think would need to change in how we deliver health and education services so that the speech and language services we need are embedded in the system, not as an extra for a child who gets a statement, but when the needs are identified, the services can be accessed?
Well, that's a wee easy question, isn't it? So we're just going to change the whole system. But I guess one of the things that I'm going to say to start with is we really, really, truly believe if we can get a speech and language therapist post across the Department of Health and Education working there, somebody at that top strategic level to inform service, delivery creation before it gets to delivery, we think that's sort of what we really need as the basis. And then the other thing I was going to talk about was embedding this early intervention and this screening.
Like LSEC is amazing, but the problem is we do not have the feet on the ground to be able to implement that. Whether it's...
So it comes back to workforce, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Is there anything around the retraining of speech and language? Is it assistance? Is that has I got the right phrase? Where is that at in Northern Ireland, and can we do more in that space?
So we don't have figures or anything for you, Chair, but we do have a number, and it really differs across the trust. Speech and language therapy, SLTAs or TIs sometimes called, across all of the different clinical areas, so adults and children. And they are absolutely fantastic, and they work so hard and they really do support our workforce. One of the things that we would actually really like to see to widen access to our workforce, because we know we have SLTA sitting there wanting to do an apprenticeship and become a speech and language therapist while they're still working. And that is something that we would absolutely, you know, and it's something we're always talking about and lobbying for. There's a lot of, I guess, barriers in the way to that at the moment. We, in terms of AHP apprenticeships, we have one in radiography, which is a pilot at the moment to see if this is a sort of proof of concept type arrangement with the University of Derby. But we're just so behind here, and I think that's what can feel frustrating, because there have been apprenticeships running for several years now across other areas of England. There have been master's programs and pre-registration master's programs running for over 20 years in other parts of the UK, and we are still here at just the undergraduate degree, where we would be asking somebody, that really key member of our workforce, to give up a job and have no money and do a 3-year degree course. So I don't even think that I've necessarily answered your question.
I still think it's a commissioning issue, Chair. You know, if we do have more SLTAs, which have been really beneficial in LSEC, you know, I think in some Pathfinder areas they would have had a lead SLT and then trained up the SLTs would have gone in and done that capacity building in schools, but we don't have that infrastructure here or those commission places to be able to deliver that. But I can certainly send you over the LSEC interim report, which might be helpful for you to review.
I think that'll be really helpful, if you can do that through the clerk, then that can be circulated with all members. That would be really helpful. No, I mean, it was probably an unfair question, but I think you are highlighting a whole range of issues where we could be doing this better. The joint commissioning of SLT posts and services, some sort of early intervention screening program. I think those are two, and then also the role of SLTAs in the system as well. So I think there's plenty there, and then that SLT sort of senior post cross departmental role, maybe like an SLT champion. Is that sort of what we're getting to at senior level? Not a tokenistic role, someone who is there at the table for a strategic planning level.
Absolutely. Something similar at the minute in Wales. No, in the Department of Health with OT.
Well, in the Department of Health, yes, there's an OT that sits across community, I think it is, for housing and for health.
Okay, yeah.
Already, which is sort of already, there's a bit of precedent there. But also, just I guess our example would be that our CSLT in Wales, there are 2 SLTs that were seconded and now permanent within their government, within education, and they are just doing great things. Just having somebody there at that point, you know, before things are created, you know, it's really, really been transformational.
That's really helpful. There's lots of sort of the higher level strategic stuff in there, and we're still finalising recommendations on our SEN inquiry as well, so it goes beyond the regs consideration. So no, lots to take away. Look, I'm sure all members will agree, when you go out to visit schools and you get onto the subject of SEN, that the 2 areas where schools generally identify gaps would be behavioural support and speech and language. Those are the 2 that almost without exception get raised as if they could get more support. That's where they would ask for it. So it's really important that we give this the attention it needs. So thank you as always for your time, and no doubt we'll be hearing from you again in the not too distant future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, members, look, an awful lot in a short briefing there. So I think there's a lot of evidence that I think we can reflect on in terms of these regulations specifically, but there's I think a substantial amount there that I think it would be worth actually raising with probably health and education separately around some of the recommendations there, and I'm happy if anyone has anything that I have missed. I think to ask around what work is being done to move to a model of joint commissioning of speech and language therapy posts, training posts and services. Any consideration being given for a speech and language therapy senior posts at senior level within departments of education and health to ensure that it's given the strategic attention it requires. any work being done to look at apprenticeships around any of the allied health professions, but with speech and language in particular, and how the role of speech and language therapy assistants can be enhanced, and any work that the department is doing to look at a programme for that screening in early years and early primary school for speech and language needs, to identify needs early. And I think also right at the start of the briefing there was reference made to concerns that the graduated response framework has no specific reference to speech and language needs, speech, language or communication needs being identified, and is it actually adequate as a document and as a framework to respond to children with speech, language and communication needs. Quite a lot there. Is there anything I have missed, and are members content that we raise those with the respective departments to get a response on those issues? Agreed?
Yeah,
agreed. Nothing to add. Okay. So
I think it should also be noted that they agreed with the Children's Law Centre that there should be a pause to this process to allow for greater scrutiny and clarification.
Yeah, so I think obviously to be noted for our deliberations on that going forward, certainly, and that should be clearly recorded on the Hansard. Okay, members, so not seeing any other indications, so that just takes us to the final items in the agenda. So item 13 on the agenda is correspondence. So as normal, we have a summary note provided for members reference, and that is at page 108 of your packs, and then pages 110 to 190, and also in table papers we have a number of items for consideration. I'll flag anything that requires committee discussion or decision. Other than that, it will be as per the summary note. Item 13.2 at page 110 is the response from the Department of Education following consideration of the raised paper, and when we forwarded scrutiny points on the Irish Medium Education Workforce Plan Bill. Do members have any comments that they wish to make in relation to that, or content to add that to the bill folder? Content? Agreed. Item 13.3 on the agenda, it's correspondence from the Bay Special School, which has invited myself as chair and the deputy chair to an inter-directorate meeting at the school to discuss estate pressures. Now, I'm not sure, Deputy Chair, what engagement you've had directly. I think when correspondence with me, the date of the 11th of June was being provisionally floated, and I've said I could attend that. But I suppose it would be first of all for the committee to agree that the chair and deputy chair, if available, would attend that meeting.
I've other engagements that day, in a school in Strabane, so it's not going to be possible.
That's okay.
But I'm happy for you to go.
Are members content that the chair goes to represent the committee? I think it would be useful insight into the estate pressures in the special school estate, and I'm more than happy to attend if members are agreed. Are we agreed? Item 13.4, page 115. It's a written submission from Queen's University and the University of Ulster in relation to the Education Holiday Meal Payments Bill. In their submission, they highlight clause 1 that the universities both agree that a direct cash transfer to a nominated bank account would be the correct method of payment, but they do seek further clarity on clause 2 relating to payments made in school holidays but not in any other school closure period, and are seeking a clearer definition of that. Would members be content to forward that to the bill sponsor for response, which could be shared with committee if we're agreed? Agreed. Item 13.5, page 119, is a reply from the Education Authority to the Special School Summer Schemes.
Sorry, I was looking in there.
Oh, apologies, Danny, didn't see the indication.
Well, it's fine. No, just there were a couple of wee things in that there. Look, I'm happy to respond to them, but I should just say that we set out what the holidays could be, and it's just the wording of what way it was drafted coming back. But I do think it's probably a conversation for the committee to raise something else around the possibility of another pandemic. So I think that there are discussions to be had around the holiday periods if, the committee would be mandated around bringing forward any amendment that maybe extends that or looking at that. It's something we haven't really overly discussed within the committee period of that. As I say, this was my attempt at it, but I think it'll be important for everyone else to have a discussion. And should another pandemic come, could it be in the face of this bill that the payments go to the parents automatically when schools are closed?
Okay. Thank you, Danny. So we can certainly note that, and I think if the members should take some time to review the correspondence from the universities, and that may well inform consideration of amendments. Are we content to move on at this stage, David?
I would just say I understand again sort of Danny's genuine approach, but I think in terms of pandemic planning and emergency planning, that's something that needs to be done on a wider basis, and probably with reference to some of that will be pre-planned and others will be dependent on what resources available from central government as well. I understand Danny will probably say, look, we pay for school meals so anyway, but I think emergency planning is a different thing to this bill. Personally, I just think it's a much wider discussion to be had, and it's something to be done in the round rather than necessarily on a specific issue.
No, thank you, David. I think probably as referenced in previous sessions, it's for members to consider if they do have amendments they want to bring forward, and we can discuss those as they would arise. Moving on then, item 13.5, page 119, it's a reply from the Education Authority in relation to special school summer schemes, and they've highlighted the work that's ongoing. Our members, I would want to suggest we potentially note, but I would want to suggest that in addition to that, we may maybe seek a briefing from the EA in relation to their feedback from how the schemes actually run this summer, and their planning for 2027, and we could perhaps seek that towards the end of 2026 or early 2027. I know that's quite far in advance, but the summer schemes to me seem like an issue that creep up on the system, despite the fact they happen every year, that it lands in sort of May, June, or what's happening with summer schemes. So I would want to suggest the committee gets ahead of that in terms of evidence, if we're agreed. Agreed. Item 13.7, it's correspondence from the Department for Communities on the impact of the holiday meal payments bill in relation to recipients of universal credit. And I would also maybe just suggest we take item 13.9 at the same time, which is the Committee for Communities response to the Education Committee on the Education Holiday Meal Payments Bill. So one thing that occurs to me is that the Department for Communities response only references universal credit, so there's no reference to legacy claimants of income support, job seekers allowance, anyone on pension credit, or indeed anyone on carers allowance. And I would want to suggest, and I can see Danny's looking in, so certainly bring you in a moment, Danny, on this, as you may have more to add. But I would suggest we might want to consider raising those specific benefits with the Department for Communities. The Committee for Communities also suggests that the committee should write to the Department of Education to specifically confirm what engagement they have undertaken with Department for Communities for the departments to satisfy themselves about any impact on benefit claimants, and indeed that they think Department for Work and Pensions should be brought in at departmental level to inform those discussions. This is time sensitive in relation to the bill, so I would want to propose that we do reach out to the department as suggested by the Committee for Communities. They have also highlighted issues around the cross-cutting nature of the responsibilities in the bill to do around addressing poverty and the health impacts, but I think that's probably to be picked up with the Department for Education when they brief us directly. So I'll put those out as potential actions. Danny, I'm happy to bring you in at this stage and then we can take it from there.
Yeah, I think if we could get the department officials from communities to come in, I think it would satisfy members. I have met with them. It is my understanding that there is nobody who will be impacted who are on historical benefits because everybody has moved on, and universal credit, as they have said, is a lot more simplistic in that regard. As far as rating off to whoever we need to rate off to, we absolutely should, but I think we should get officials in and let them and say it, and let members and question them in regards to all of this, because I actually hated it this at the second stage when it was raised by a member that I in my due diligence and talking to the officials that this has happened. So I would like to think officials would be talking to themselves, but let's be honest, we've seen even ministers come and pick up the phone to themselves, so they may not be, and that shouldn't be something that comes at us at consideration stage. Good committee stage will make for a better consideration stage. I've been very clear on that, and I do think we need officials to be coming in here proactively as well, because in the only correspondence that we had in committee with the department officials, I was really disappointed with them, really disappointed. They came in with a bit of, they did state at the very beginning of it that it was harmful to the education budget, but other things aren't harmful. Where they wrote back on that when they were questioned, they didn't actually come forward with anything other than what they thought. I don't think that's good enough from senior officials, to be honest with you. And I do think they should be coming in and engaging, because this is a primary piece of legislation that with their input can be a very good piece and a very good consideration stage that we could have if they were to, show up and do the right thing.
Thank you, Danny. I have to say I was a little bit disappointed with the DFC response in writing. It just was sort of, it won't impact universal credit, sort of 2 lines. It didn't feel like it really addressed the potential scope of this. So I know we're pressed for time with agenda. I think if we were able even to secure a virtual briefing from Department for Communities officials, a 15-minute should do it around the benefits crossover, if members are agreed, unless there's other views as to a better way to progress that.
How about that?
Agreed? All agreed. And
honestly, Chair, 15 minutes will do it, because that's all. My meeting was very short. It was straight to the point and they laid it all out there. And again, I think the education officials should be doing the exact same. They know what's coming.
Yes, I think we should. I would suggest, and I think we have agreement to write to the department as suggested by the Communities Committee as well. But no, I would be happier to have that on the Hansard rather than a very, very short written response there, which I don't think covers the breadth. So I think we have agreement on that item then. Item 13.8, page 123, it's an email from 2 individuals regarding restrictive interventions, data held by the EA, and they are calling for the EA to publish data relating to restrictive practices which under FOI they are stating they believe EA does collate, and they're asking the committee to request sight of this data and circulate it with relevant stakeholders. I'm happy to propose that we request sight of the data, and based on the response we can review it from there if members are agreed. Agreed. Item 13.13, page 142. It's the Education Minister's 5-year budget strategy consultation report. I'd like to propose that we note, but with a view to raising with the Minister when he is here, as this is obviously a key strategic element of the department's work at the moment, and potentially when we next hear from DE finance officials or indeed the Permanent Secretary, that we should be noting that briefing if we're all agreed. Item 13.14, page 154. It's the Department of Education Business Plan 2025-26 End of Year Report on Progress, and it notes that Strategic Priority 3, delivering an effective child-first collaborative and high-quality education system, has not been met. So to address this, they state they're developing an accountability framework to drive improvement through responsibility and answerability. It's quite a big statement to have made that they are not delivering on that strategic priority, but again I would want to suggest we potentially would note that for picking up with the Minister or indeed other departmental officials as required. It may be, as time permits after the summer, we might want to seek a briefing from that new accountability unit that seems to be operating in the department, but I'm going to propose we note at this stage. We agreed? Agreed. Item 13.15, page 155, it's Committee for Finance Guidance to Departments in absence of a budget for 26-27. So the Department of Finance has informed the Finance Committee that in the absence of an agreed budget and budget bill, it is likely there will not be a June monitoring round. I think members will all agree that this is a serious position that we have reached in terms of public finances, and I think I'm conscious reading that item that it has been a while since we have heard from departmental officials in relation to the department's finances. So I would suggest, I know time is tight, but that we seek a briefing from the department on what plans they are working on in terms of drawing up any implications for service delivery, how they will actually manage their budget in the context we now find ourselves in. I'm sure members will all have engaged with the department around different pots of money and grants that are now just being held in abeyance, and I think that scenario is only going to get worse. So happy to hear from members. I can see Carrie have indicated. Deputy Chair, do you have anything to add? Or no. Cara, do you want to come in there?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just an agreement. I think the department will have to make a number of difficult choices about the allocation of funds. So I don't know if we should maybe write a letter in advance of a briefing, but just to get an understanding of will they have to scale back any critical projects as a result of funding uncertainty, arm's length bodies, what it will mean for our services that help support our children each and every day. I think it would just be great to get an outline of what they're looking at.
Yes, I certainly concur and would be happy for any invite to a meeting to go along with those requests as well, because it is obviously, I think we're all going to be aware of areas where we're already seeing things scaling back. Danny?
Yeah, just a follow on from Cara's point. That's a very important point, because the minister has responded to a number of questions saying that it's funding into the AI and into Transform Ed. It's going to have no impact on education or any services. So it'll be interesting to see what services that the minister is actually going to pick, that he's going to scale back on.
No, absolutely. No other indicator. David, you're indicating it.
I think again, Chair, just to make the point that everyone agrees that AI is going to be critical to our education going forward. If you're going to have AI, you're going to have the licenses for it. It's just as simple as that. So I think this is a bit of a straw man being set up continually. But in terms of the cuts that education might need to make that's been referred to, I have to say it pales in comparison to the cuts and difficult decisions that they will have to make if we end up with a bad budget that leaves the education system in hundreds of millions of pounds of pressures. So I think it's just to put that on the record. I mean, none of us want the education system to face those pressures, but if we end up with a bad budget, that's exactly where it goes.
Thank you. David and Cara, you had just indicated there, I think.
Yeah, just AI is mentioned there.
Yes.
So just to note again, my declaration of interest is I do a couple hours a year on an AI ethics board. Thank you.
I suspect that we may find AI mentioned at every committee meeting between now and the
Painful.
summer, so maybe just put in, declare that
something.
interest as a standing item. Okay, members, I think we are agreed on the actions from that. Apologies, there are a lot of items here that do require committee consideration, but we'll go through them as quickly as we can. Item 13.16, page 171, it's correspondence from an individual regarding a report following his reply to the SEN regulations consultation that he would like to share with committee, and is offering to brief the committee. I'm going to propose, given our time constraints, that we do acknowledge receipt and include in the SEN regulations papers and indeed potentially the SEN inquiry. But if there is a report that can be shared, we can certainly seek a copy of that if members are agreed. Agreed. Item 13.17, page 84 of tabled papers. It's further correspondence from an individual regarding a regrettably still unresolved SEN post-primary placement issue. Members will recall that committee considered the correspondence from this individual at last week's meeting and agreed to recommend that the Education Authority provide a response and make contact with the individual. Or given that action is in train, are members content to note that correspondence? Agreed. Okay, item 14 in the agenda, forward work programme, and that's a draft forward work programme is in your packs at page 192. So quick reminder that the committee team emailed members a list of dates for additional meetings due to the volume of legislation to be considered, so that we have some slack built in should we need it. If that hasn't already had your attention, if you could reply to the committee staff team so that they can schedule those in should they be required. I don't know if the clerk wants to speak to the forward work programme or if it is self-explanatory. I did just want to highlight one concern, and it is just around the Irish Medium Workforce Plan Bill in terms of the advice from the department coming through. And I know that we had tried to nudge them along in terms of getting that evidence to committee. I mean, I don't think any of us wanted to sign off the committee stage without receiving that advice. So I don't know whether it would be appropriate to just emphasise to the department again that the committee really does need to see that. I don't know if anyone wants to add anything to that. No. Okay.
Just on a forward work programme, I would like to invite some primary school principals from some of the Bunscollina. We still have space there, don't we?
Hopefully.
I think so. So next, let me see. We've got Corleone and Gael Scully next week.
From the week after.
Yeah. Save the Children. I think we're going to have a look at children in Northern Ireland today and see how much they could add by coming. So they may opt out, but so there would be a space there. The 10th of June, the minister's coming from 2 to 4, so that's going to be really your main item. I can look at the 24th of June because we don't actually have SEN regs stakeholders in there. If that's okay, and if you can let me know of particular names, because I thought that maybe those
names over
principals
the
were
next
going to bring
couple
them
of
along.
days.
Okay, super. Thank you.
That's good.
Okay, and I was probably just would draw members' attention to the fact that, you know, as we get to the end of June, we would definitely need to be, you know, in a position to be wrapping up the committee stage for the Irish medium bill, unless we're in over the summer. So that's just to highlight that. And I know from the, you know, we've had these discussions around the school uniforms bill.
Department give any explanation for the delay?
Just that's when they anticipate getting legal advice towards the end of the term, and to then quickly write to us before recess. So there just didn't seem to be flexibility with that.
Okay.
But I'll represent again.
Well, look, I think we have the committee stage running to the end of August, but that was very much built in as a sort of absolute contingency plan. I don't think you know, that it is an ideal scenario to be asking the Assembly Committee staff team to be, you know, surrendering annual leave to be coming in for that sort of activity. So, you know, I think we all would be wanting to work to bring this to conclusion before recess. So I really do hope we can get that material through from the department. Okay. So other than that, are we content to endorse the forward work programme as drafted? We agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. Item 15, any other business? Is there any other business?
I just have one. So the Deputy Chair mentioned last week that Carlene Gail Scully-Octa had written in about to just amend a couple of items in the Ray's report that they prepared for his bill, and so the research team have amended the section of their report about the department not having done a formal audit, and adding in there an audit done in 2025 by Sina G, and that has been done, and the paper has been republished on the Education Committee website. And I have a draft letter for matters arising next week that we can then hand to Charlock when he comes here. So that's just to show everyone what's been done in the background in the meantime.
That's great.
Okay.
Thanks for the clarification on that. So item 16 then is date, time and place of next meeting. That's scheduled for Wednesday the 3rd of June, 2 p.m. in room 29 and online. If that is all in order, I'll put the question that the committee meeting does now adjourn. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Great. Okay.
Committee room 29. Sound. 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 Committee Room 29, sound. Committee Room 29, sound. Committee Room 29, sound. Committee Room 29, sound.